It's my camera. So. What's going on?
What's up, y'all?
So it's Brian and Fearless with the Trial and Error podcast. We're playing around with a couple of different settings here, y'all. So, but on this week, last week we talked about misinformation and how it spreads, and we didn't quite finish the entire outline. I feel like we're going to come back to that one. Let's get through the beginning of the year and come back to the misinformation stuff, because there's always new. The beginning of the year is always crazy, and there's always new BS floating around. This week, I think we're going to talk about remixing the American narrative. And basically, this conversation is we explore what happens when society no longer agrees on the story it's telling about itself. And so,
say that part again.
So this week we'll talk about what happens when society no longer agrees on the story it tells about itself. And so
that's deep.
So we're going to talk about kind of the remixing / collapse of the American narrative, why shared myths matter more than shared facts, and back to how grievance kind of fills the vacuum when that meaning disappears. And I don't know if there's ever been a collective meaning, because I think what happened with the American narrative is there are more people, there are more voices getting the microphone. And so the stories that were never told publicly are now becoming like common knowledge, and some of us don't know how to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
There's a specific segment of the society that's not used to dealing with hearing from voices that are they normally don't hear
that were marginalized,
that were marginalized and didn't have a huge space. I mean, I was talking to Fearless off air about a lot of my Black nerd stuff and why I feel like it's important to maintain a space for Black nerds, and I could even talk about some of that. What's going on there. But basically, this is a conversation about identity, power, resentment, and what replaces hope when people can't see a future that includes them. One of the things one of the ideas that I've been kind of playing around with is we talk about grievance politics and whatnot. One of the things that I see is really interesting is there's a generation of folks who, and we talked about it a couple weeks ago, there's a generation of folks who are mad and lashing out because the segregated, or easier to compete in America, where you don't have to compete with other groups as much. There's not bylaw segregation, not de jure segregation. So you have to actually openly compete with all these groups that you never had to compete with before. There's a lot of people that are pissed off about that. And
well, wait, what do you mean?
So just like where you find all these people mad about, well, the Black guy took my job, or the woman took my job, or the immigrant took my job. Those people that complain about that kind of stuff, they are mad because they're growing up in a world where they actually have to compete with all these other people for those positions.
Yeah, that part.
And in originally it never was like for their parents and grandparents, their grandpa and grandma had it made. Well, grandpa specifically, because for Black folks, the entire concept of a stay-at-home parent, that's a new phenomenon. We weren't allowed to do that. Like, Black women weren't allowed to stay home to raise their kids. It was they made it so the laws were saying if you weren't working as a Black person, you were loitering, and if you're out in public, you can get arrested for that. But the world that their grandma and grandpa grew up in, where there's segregation and only specific groups had the opportunity to compete with, for jobs and stuff like that. Some people are struggling with that piece of it because now they have to compete with the entire, all these other people that had traditionally been excluded. And they're not getting the wins that their grandparents had. And so there's a lot of people that feel like they're owed something by the society. They feel like society owes them in some degree, and they feel like they're owed the life their grandparents had. And it's not the case anymore. And unfortunately, their grandparents and parents didn't drill into their heads like, hey, you're going to have to go out there and get it. You're going to have to go out there and compete with everybody, not just people that look like you for positions. And so we start running into it when when you see college exams and stuff like that, or college entrance, where you got to get into college and stuff, they start looking at these kids with these super diverse pool of activities. And they've done all this stuff and gone above and beyond, because typically my high school experience, that's what I had to do. Like, I had to be in all these clubs. I had to do all this stuff. I had to be president of this, that, and the third in order to qualify for the scholarships, and have my school paid for, because my mom couldn't afford it. And so a lot
Okay.
of these kids, and I saw it like this is maybe 20, 30 years of stuff that I found out back in the days. Like, I attended UNO, and what UNO is the University of Nebraska in Omaha, for those that aren't in local. And so when I went to UNO, what we ran into was, you had all these farm kids who had only interacted with other farm kids. And now they're in this big pool of diverse kids.
Right.
And I heard some of the craziest shit from these farm kids about what they perceived my world was like, and what these black and brown kids, how their college experience was. This is where I first heard that black people get their college paid for. Like, we go to college for free. I had some girl tell me that.
Right.
And say, well, yeah, I got a scholarship, but my junior and senior year was almost like a part-time job, filling out scholarship applications and participating in all this stuff so that I could make my application look as incredible as possible. I was taking college courses in high school. So I had to put in all this work to get to this point. So I went to school for free, but I paid an effort. I paid sweat equity for this. No, she thought her parents told her that black people just go to school for free, no matter how. You don't have to be good, and you don't have to be a good student. You don't have to make any kind of grade or anything. Your college is paid for. And it upset her worldview when I said, that is ridiculous. That is absurd.
And I bet that the thing that kind of disrupted her world on that is that who it was that told her that, and then had to come to find out that they were wrong,
right,
about that. But again, it's not even that they were wrong, but it's who was wrong, which is her parents.
Yep.
So if this one little thing you got wrong, what else did you get wrong too?
Right. That's why a lot of people.
Well, at least sometimes you would ask that question. I don't think that everybody does. I think that, well, maybe they just didn't know. But again, though, my son asks me questions all the time, and I have to tell him, I don't know. We can go find out, but I don't know the answer to that.
Well, and the thing is, that's why we talked about it a couple weeks ago, though. But this is what happens when people talk about, my kid went off to college and got brainwashed. No, they went off to college. You kept them in this little box of people that looked, talked, and acted and believed the same things that they did. And that ended up becoming their entire worldview. But then they go to college, and they're with all these people from all around the world who have all these different viewpoints and all these different experiences. And they end up realizing that the narrative that they've been fed from the time they're little is not true. And so as a result, they come back different. They're not coming back different because they've been brainwashed. They're coming back different because they're coming back with worldly experience, and they're basically bringing fire back down from the mountain. Was it Prometheus bringing fire back, delivering fire back down to the people that didn't have fire? They're delivering fire down to the people that didn't have fire, and kind of like the allegory of the cave, right? Where these people are looking and seeing the world as it really is. Instead of embracing the world as it really is, they freak out and say, oh, this college changed you. This is evil and wrong and bad. As opposed to, you're a more worldly person than anybody that we've known.
Right. But then at the same time, though, I think that there's two, the dichotomy of that story is that on one hand, you have the people who refuse to listen or see what's right in front of them. Okay, and that's one thing, because people are going to do that. But what happens? And this is the part that I linger with constantly. What happens to you because they refuse to see this? Do you sit and do you cower? Do you, like Lucan did, and go back in, sit down, and face forward because nobody else wants to see it, or do you stand alone by yourself?
This is what happens, and this is why
Right.
they talk. This is why they talk about the Nebraska brain drain. They fucking leave. They get on the first thing smoking out of here.
Okay, so that's the other thing
Yeah.
is that so you get away from this particular environment
Uh-huh.
to go to an environment that's a little bit more suitable for what you're now seeing.
Yeah, for the new world that you're experiencing now. This new world you're experiencing now, you go to a place that reflects that. As opposed to trying to constantly drag this old world into your new understanding. You just say, I'm not gonna it's not gonna work here. I need to get out of here. And that's why a lot of kids end up leaving, specifically places like Nebraska, Kansas. um you know shoot, I met a girl who was from South Dakota, and Omaha was the big city for her. And
Well, what part of South Dakota was you from?
I forgot. It was some little small town in South Dakota, some smaller. It wasn't a town, but a small city in South Dakota. And for her, this was the big city for her. Like, this was as big as it get. I actually had an English teacher in ninth grade who Omaha, like, she came from some place out in the Panhandle in Nebraska, and Omaha was big city life for her. And she was like, it moves too fast for me. And I'm sitting there like, Omaha? Like, you're talking about Omaha. Now, at the time, by the time I had met her, I'd already traveled, like, this is ninth grade. I'd already been out to been out to New Jersey for a while, like, and hung out there and hung out with my cousins out there and stuff. And so I'm sitting there coming back to Omaha, like, Omaha is Omaha, right? Like, but for her, it was the big city, and she couldn't deal with big city life, so she ended up getting out of here because it was too much for her. And I think a lot of times when somebody says that, either one, they've gotten accustomed to that small town kind of lifestyle, which is fine. Omaha is a small town. For a lot of people, Omaha is a small town, right? But she got accustomed to a certain way of life, and that was fine. And the other side, she kept stumbling backwards into weird racial dynamic issues because she was at North. And so she's from this little tiny town, and most of her class is black. And so she's still trying to figure out that side of things because she never really interacted with black kids before. Like, this was her first job doing it. And so,
Oh, well, was she a teacher?
yeah, she was a teacher. And she was cool as hell, but this was our first time interacting. Like, she was young.
No,
She was first time interacting with black kids. And so she felt like big city life wasn't for her.
Or just so many of them.
Yeah.
Because where she is, I guarantee you there's a black family somewhere there, but they are the what's the word I'm looking for? There's not that much diversity there.
Right.
Whatsoever. And when there's not a lot of diversity, it becomes what is that word? Hegemonic?
Yep.
Or whatever. So like, yeah, so everybody looks like you gotta do this. You tolerate other people, but you ain't really got to deal with them like that. But then when you go into a place where you might be the minority, it's like, nah, I don't like this. I don't like this at all, or whatever. And which is really crazy, though. I mean, but I also think too, again, cultural type stuff, socialization and type stuff. I'm reading. I can't say I'm reading. I read a friend of mine. She's getting her master's degree, and she asked me to read her what is that called? A dissertation?
Yeah.
Is that what that is?
Her graduate thesis. I think.
Yeah, her graduate thesis. Yes. Yeah. Okay. So a thesis submitted in partial fulfillment of requirements of the degree Master's of Arts and histories at Gettysburg College or whatever. So anyway, so she asked me to read it, and the title of her thesis is no south of the plain. Excuse me, Platte. Lynching and white supremacy in Nebraska's interwar years.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things she's talking about in this is the 1919 public lynching of Willie Brown downtown Omaha.
Mm-hmm.
And I really love how she put together all of these different things. And she had obviously it was fact, not feeling. It was fact, not emotions. And she was able to show a multitude of different newspaper articles. It was TV wasn't around like that or whatever, but there was just a multitude of newspaper articles, magazines, and from all over the place, talking about things south of the Mason-Dixie line, and they were thinking that, well, no, lynching is just something that they do down south.
Oh no!
And then she's writing like, no, this is one of those things. But as so I'm reading her dissertation. I'm reading her thesis. Dissertation is, I guess, when you get your doctorate. Sorry. So I'm reading her thesis, and I'm like, okay. And I read it. It's about 56 pages. I'm like, okay. And I go through it. I think it's great.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's something that just keeps bothering me. And I hit her up, and I'm like, hey, so I read your thesis. I love it. But here's a few things that I would probably add to it. I'm like, your argument is that because it happened in Nebraska, it seems to just be an isolated event with the Willie Brown thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
I said, okay, but the problem is that the way that you put this thesis, that seems to be the only thing that's there. So I'm like, you have to, for me, you got to show some more people.
Uh-huh.
Even maybe they weren't lynched, but again, lynching doesn't always mean lynching. Show them how they were unalived in another way.
So
or show them how their freedom was taken in another way. So again, we're just playing devil's advocate, but I'm like, you have to be able to show me more, because from a colonizer standpoint, this is just an isolated event.
And so this is where, if she's listening, or if you want to communicate it to her, the thing that made Willie Brown unique in Omaha history was it happened during the bloody summer of 1919.
She wrote about that too. Yep.
And so it was all across the country, different isolated events, and a lot of it targeted Black populations that came up during the Great Migration, which is, those that don't know, the Great Migration is where Black people
left the South.
They left the South.
And started coming up north. That's the reason why you had people in St. Louis, Chicago, L.A.
Well, here's the thing, though. My family started in Kentucky. We ended up in Missouri. During the Great Migration, we migrated from Missouri to Omaha because Missouri was a Jim Crow state. Missouri was a border state, and so Missouri had slavery, and so they had a lot of remnants of Jim Crow in Missouri, and so we migrated from Missouri to Omaha. My family been here since the 1700s. We migrated, started Kentucky, hit Missouri. We had our small township. Was this Seldina? That's one of the places we were, and then we had another independent incorporated town. But Jim Crow got so bad in Missouri that my family migrated to Omaha because it was perceived that Omaha had opportunities, and the opportunities for Omaha was in the packing plants and the packing houses.
Yeah,
and that's where my great grandparents ended up kind of building the family, started building out the family stuff. And so one of the things is, but it wasn't like you said, it wasn't an isolated incident. All the stuff that happened that bloody summer, it was all violence targeted at these newly established Black communities in these cities and towns across the country. And that's what happened. So, and this is what we're talking about when we talk about the narrative. For a lot of those people, the narrative shifted when they actually had to compete, or what they imagined to. They ended up having new people to compete with for jobs and resources.
and that's literally what I was going to ask you,
Uh-huh.
which you had already just talked on. That was why were they targeted, and they were targeted for the same exact reason why our administration targets Hispanics today.
Mm-hmm.
So all this stuff that's going on at this present moment in time, this isn't new.
No, it's not.
Like like by no means. So I don't want people thinking that, oh man, what they're doing to them is new. No, this ain't new.
This is scapegoating.
This is scapegoating because they did the same exact thing 100 years ago when black people came from all over the place to come up just to go find jobs. And I mean, and what do you do with that when you have a barragement of competition now?
Well, and here's
And it's not just, hold on one second.
yeah.
And it's not just the fact of that you have this thing of competition, because why don't white people have been competing against each other from the beginning? Don't get that twisted.
Right.
The thing that made it different with us is that these companies could pay us pennies on the dollar and we'll outwork you because we have to.
Yeah, just keep that.
Whereas instead of you getting mad at the people that's destroying your economy and your infrastructure, you get mad at the result of what they're doing to you. So your anger, which you have every right to be upset, is directed towards the people who ain't got nothing to do with it.
Right. And that's what I'm saying.
Which is still going on today.
Because if you're okay, let's take two people. Let's take two groups of people, right? One group, and we're talking about during segregation. You have one group that benefits, even if they're poor, they benefit from a segregated society because they still have jobs that are kind of earmarked for them. So they always know that their bills are going to be taken care of. And then all of a sudden, introducing into that society, now you got a group of people that aren't protected by that. And on one hand, they have an incentive to outwork because just to get a pittance of what you have, they have to almost kill themselves to do it.
Yeah, no, yeah,
but,
for sure.
But when you're competing with somebody that's learned to live on less, if you're competing, you cannot compete evenly with somebody that has learned to live on less. No. If you're doing the same thing, if they've learned standards of survival that you aren't willing to do, they're going to beat you every single time because they can endure a lot more than you are conditioned to endure. Because for a lot of black folks, striking wasn't an answer. You could bear, like, you could, unless you were like a job where we completely dominated, which was like porters in a lot of segregate, like we were allowed to be porters and everything on the railroads. You didn't have the power to unionize and strike and do collective action. And so we had to take what was given. And so that's what was happening. That was the frame that was set in 1919. And so you had this influx of black people that would do whatever it needs to be done to survive, versus you had your caste system for white folks where you had poor, middle class didn't necessarily exist. So you basically had poor and rich, and the poor white folks are feeling the squeeze because they're caught in between these black folks that are just, they'll do anything. And it's not their fault. They have to do anything to put food on the table. So it's not, they'll take the lower pay and the longer hours, but then it trickles up because they're like, oh, well, we could just replace you.
Yeah, that part.
And instead of getting mad at the company and saying, why don't you provide fair wages for all of us? If you provided fair wages for, if you decided that in their company, you're not going to have a segregated company, and you provided fair, livable wages for all your workers, the competition goes away. Or it takes a different form, because that's the other side. Just because we fix the material needs doesn't mean that the side that always has benefited from segregation is going to be happy, because that's the other side of it. But on paper, you would imagine that this group here would be, okay, so we're all getting paid the same. I think we're cool. Historically, America has shown that when we're both getting paid the same, if there's a difference between me and you, and we're both getting paid the same, some people can't deal with that mentally. They have to be that they've been socialized to believe that they're up
above somebody else, correct?
above somebody else.
And yeah, and the
But
only
on
way to do
paper,
it is right.
but on paper, that's the idea. You raise it so that everybody gets an equal shot at the money, and people are supposed to be happy. Now, and that's where a lot of I'm getting far afield of what I want to talk about, but that's where for me a lot of the leftist argument about class consciousness falls apart. Because their idea for a lot of people who don't want to deal with stickier, uglier issues in America like racism that are hard to explain and they don't have easy answers. They think that if we all just focus on the class divide and make sure everybody's getting paid a fair livable wage and everything, all the other problems of society goes away. And the thing I would challenge them to say is, do you think it was rich people that were in the rabble on Bloody Summer of 1919? You think it was rich people that were out in the streets by and large?
Right.
Who was out in the streets by and large? Who are most of the people? Now, I know one of them was kind of led by one of Omaha's old crime families, one of their mob bosses. He was one of the main agitators and instigators. And a lot of it was he used that as an opportunity to try to almost throw a coup on the mayor, because he wanted the mayor out and he wanted his own guy in place.
Oh yeah, matter of fact, yeah. When I was just reading about the, when I was reading her thesis, she was talking about that too, because he actually got the bejesus beat out of him.
Yeah, they tried to lynch the mayor.
Yeah, they tried to off him too,
and
whatever. Like, yeah, now they weren't playing.
But the Omaha, like this is where, and so remember what I talked a couple weeks ago about this theory that most major cities in the Midwest were just big criminal enterprises that we built infrastructure around. The reason my working model came from Kansas City and Omaha, because in Oklahoma City, because that's kind of what the genesis of these places were. Omaha was almost like Las Vegas for a while, a wide open, vice-driven economy, and so we had mob bosses here. We had crime families here that kind of dictated the flow of everything from police to local politics, and so the mob boss that was in place at the time, he had an incentive to remove the mayor. And so he's the one that fomented a lot of this, stirred up a lot of this
wouldn't doubt it.
And then used it as opportunity to get them to kill the mayor so that he could put one of his own guys in, but he wasn't successful. But
again, though, what you just said there, I mean, think about how you touch it, but you about to move off real quick, is that they learned that the only way that you're going to win here is through politics.
Yep.
They learn that. So again, what do? You incite a riot, you incite problems, you incite this, you agitate the mob, you do this and the other, blah, blah, blah. Get rid of him so you can put your guy in.
Yep.
Because once your guy's in, you're good to go.
All politics are local. All politics are local, good or bad. All politics are local. If you want to impact, if you want the most, if you don't, even if you don't believe in voting, if you want the most direct impact for your vote, you got to participate in local politics, because those are the ones that shape your day-to-day life. They're the ones that come up with the laws that you follow, what kind of policing strategy is implemented, what areas of the city get developed, what doesn't. All politics are local. So even if you don't believe in national elections, local politics is the way to go, especially if you have a candidate, if you have an idea or a vision of a candidate that you want to represent you, it always starts on the local scene. That's what one of my big arguments with people that they're mad about national politics, rightfully so, but they don't want to. It's like, if you want to build a candidate, you got to start at the local level and build them up.
Yeah, correct.
You can't put in somebody on the national scene that's a transformative person. It very rarely works.
I mean, right. I mean, and the thing that I mean, if you really think about it, the thing that got Barack Obama, the thing that got him not only elected, but the reason why his case was such an anomaly is that he was only senator for a little bit of time. He had never been governor, never been mayor. It was just kind of like the perfect storm of him just coming through or whatever. And to see something like that again, that was kind of. I mean, I don't know if you'll see that again for something like that, but I mean,
Well, and he had to move in order for it to happen. He had to move right. Like a lot of the things that he did as senator and the grassroots stuff that he did, community organizing and stuff. He had to actually politically move to the right in order to be a viable national candidate. Just because the candidate always, this country always kind of up until recently has always gone down the middle. Whoever is the least offensive candidate, and the one that seems to pitch, whoever has the bigger tent, um, in terms of left and right politics, is typically the one that wins. But Obama had to decidedly move to the right because our politic in this country is shifting rightward. And so, and we talked about Overton window and all the other stuff, and people can argue and debate with me on this one, but collectively, politically, we have had a shift towards the. Denison lived closer to Middle Park. Slaves were in the. Yep. Oh, hey, Mr. Schultz. This is my government teacher.
Hello, Mr. Schultz. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm looking at the census. So they had 1854 census was 13 enslaved people, and then 1960 was 15. But it also states though too, though, you really can't count these numbers because there were some people that just weren't counted at all. So your number could be pretty high. However, these are just the ones that they'll actually give you, or whatever. So it says that during the 1960s, showing 15 slaves out of 81 black residents, mostly in Nebraska City and Fort Kearny. So it says, however, the actual count was likely due to a misunderreporting, especially at military installations, and some historians believe that many slave owners kept enslaved people in Missouri to avoid taxes.
Yep.
Which that's kind of cool.
So
yeah, go ahead.
Real quick, Mr. Schultz is a large reason why I am the political nerd that I am, because he made that class exciting. American government, U.S. government was one of my favorite classes in 9th grade, and he really sparked that. And I'd already done all the political conversation with my mom and stuff, but he showed me that there was a pathway to enjoy this stuff without getting so far sucked into it where you end up becoming an ideologue. The person Mr. Schultz is mentioning is Tom Dennison, and Tom Dennison was kind of a local mob boss, if you will. And I mean, he was really like, you even go to his wiki, and I know Wikipedia isn't the best, but you go to his wiki, the boss of the Omaha, Nebraska political machine. He was a boss. He was the party boss, and so he represented stuff above board and underneath the board, if you will, and had interest on both ends of it. But yeah, the thing about, like I said, Nebraska politics has always been kind of an anomaly, just of how it's kind of been constructed up until recently. For a long time, the party stuff, like when I was growing up, and it wasn't, I knew that, this person was Democrat, Republican, but it really didn't necessarily matter as much in Omaha as it did in other places. And so, Omaha really, because we had like Ben Nelson was our senator and governor for a while. He was a really conservative Democrat. That's almost an anomaly now. Like, you don't see that. And so Omaha politics is always I always have to preface when I talk about politics, I'm coming from an Omaha politics kind of mind frame where I grew up in it, where the party names were just names and people really were more policy driven. But we've kind of switched into this hyper partisan gang stuff, if you will. So let me get back on to your list, because you were on to something with the census and stuff like that.
I mean, he said that Dennison lived close to Miller Park, which is also where the Caniglia Mr. C's used to be
Yep.
over there too, whatever. So is that all why that area was kind of like that?
I know, and this is later on, but I know that when they were looking at installing that entire interstate system, the North Freeway, the reason why it terminates right at that place right before you get to Miller Park was that was the natural segregated line in Omaha. Like you get there, and that was kind of the white neighborhoods, and so they won't abide by this big interstate system bisecting their neighborhoods and destroying their houses. But for the black residents, my family included, there was no consideration given. And so basically they bulldozed all of our houses and businesses, everything, and dropped that freeway there. And so I don't know what
Okay,
it is specifically about that area, but I know for a long time, traditionally, that was for a while before we had all the flight out to the suburbs and everything. That was the white part of Omaha. So maybe that had something to do with it. Because you even drive through there, you could see some of where some of those big, huge houses are and stuff. Like, okay, this is probably where the money used to be around Omaha. And where the money would be if you're a Caniglia, if you're a mob boss or something along those lines, you would probably live where the money is in Omaha. And so, yeah, you would probably be in those areas over there.
Yeah, I mean, because so we've always known that that the interstate's right there, the highway's right over there, whatever. But and it never dawned on me, like if I'm out west somewhere and I need to hop on the interstate, there's no interstates really close to you. You know what I'm saying? You have to go from point A to drive all the way over somewhere just to get connected to the interstate to go out wherever you're gonna go. And again, it never really dawned on me why that was. Whereas in North Omaha, the interstate's right there.
Right.
I mean, we got two. Well, at least let me rephrase that. Like if you're off of 30th, then you got. I mean, I guess you got a few because man, but I lived off of Ames, so go down the street. There's one right there, and then when I lived over on Mary Street, there's another one all the way down at the end of the block over by Florence. So again, we have a whole thing over there to be able to get out and get to wherever we need to go. But if you were out west, it's not really that way.
Right. And it's kind of designed that way. And it goes into when we talk about structural racism, architectural racism and stuff. People sneer at it. People take up, when you talk about environmental racism, they're talking about what the clouds are racist. No, what these things are is like environmental racism is why there was a big, huge coal factory in the middle of North Omaha that wouldn't be in other parts of the city. And it was fouling the air in North Omaha.
So there put vacuum plants.
Yep.
In South Omaha.
Structural racism of a city. You design a city so that the people that you don't want getting out to the suburbs can't get out to the suburbs. You can restrict people's motion. I know specifically in New York, there was a time where they made it so that the beaches were literally inaccessible by black people if you did not have a car, because the way they designed the bridges and overpass systems, they were too short for the buses to fit under. And it was designed that way. So because you didn't want the people that could be bussed in, you didn't want if they can't get under the overpass, they can't get there. And so things like that.
Sir, you are so and what is that, Mr. Schultz? You are so right about that. Because you're dead right about
right.
Brian, we were just talking about this because I was like, why is it there? I live in Bellevue. So I'm like, why can't you get to Bellevue from the bus? Why doesn't Uncle Matt bring you here? And it's because they don't want you here.
Bellevue doesn't want it, bro.
They don't want you here like that. Papillion is, I barely ever see anything off of Papillion unless you're getting towards like, what is that? Of 72nd, but again, that's not Papillion, that's Omaha. So Omaha, you'll get that, but Papillion, La Vista, Bellevue, no sir, no sir.
It used to be when and even because when I was working at Westroads in high school, That's where the bus stopped. That was the end of the bus route.
That part, yeah.
And
Number 18. What was it? 18, 8?
8 and 2, I think.
Was it 2?
I think so.
Okay, you might be right.
It wouldn't. You like you got to West Roads and that was it. There was nothing else. Like you were. That was the end of your route.
But then it went right back going back towards North Omaha.
Right.
And all them over there.
And there was and it started shrinking down. Like there's only a certain number of buses that will even go out that far. But then, as you know, Omaha was expanding. Like when I was growing up, you didn't go past West Roads. There was nothing. There was no like the first time I went past West Roads, it was like driving into Narnia, as far as I was concerned. With me and my friends,
driving into Narnia.
We drove past West Roads.
That's crazy.
And drove all the way up to 132nd and Dodge, where the Hy-Vee was. I'd never seen anything. I'd never seen that. I'd never experienced that. All I knew was Boys Town was a little bit up the way.
I lived at Boys Town.
Yeah.
And everything outside of that was all like corn and
nothing.
There was nothing else out past that.
And now, if you go there, I always joke about it, but it's true. There's an entire second city out in West Omaha, a whole brand new, with stores you've never heard of, with restaurants that you've never seen before, with all kinds of stuff out there, way out, and the bus still don't go out there. They don't want you out there. The bus will not go out there. You have to almost take one of those express buses that has limited hours.
So what about like Apple? Because I was talking to a friend of mine about that, and I was like, dude, I never understood why they would put the Apple store so far out there as opposed to just putting it in the middle of Omaha.
Filtering.
But then everybody can get to it.
From a marketing standpoint, basically, you're filtering. You're essentially, in your mind, if you put that Apple store in one of the highest, and I don't even want to say it's the highest income zip code in Omaha, because there's stuff Midtown that is a high income zip code, right? But you're essentially filtering your audience. So if you know that your Apple store is out where the buses don't run and only people who have cars can get to it, you're basically setting your baseline you're setting your general baseline of services at you're setting a floor for it, if that makes sense. You're not going to make less than this from this client base. And so that's why the Apple store is where it's at. And I don't think they're having any plans. They might open up other Apple stores out west. They ain't moving east, because there's a certain until there is where they can filter out people. It's a price anchoring thing. Until they can filter out, unless they can start filtering out their potential client base, they ain't gonna move that thing out east. There's what in their mind, Apple is a product that people pay a premium for. Love it or hate it, they'll pay a premium for the product, and so they're going. Part of their positioning is putting the Apple store in those trendy kind of developments where you're going to have a specific audience that is catered towards it. Everybody else can go to Verizon and get theirs. You want an iPhone? You can go to Verizon, you can run over to T-Mobile.
There's a Verizon and a T-Mobile and a Boost on every corner.
On every corner, but if you're looking for Apple Store, you got to go where the buses don't run. And for somebody that, like for me, when I used to be fully dependent on busing to get around, that was a very daunting, intimidating task, because if there's only one bus that comes out here, if I miss that bus, I'm screwed, because there's no way for me to get back home. Like, this is before Uber and calling a cab in Omaha wasn't a thing that people did. And so it's a very natural way to filter people out. Same thing in Bellevue. It's a filtering way. If there's buses running to Bellevue, like, it doesn't make any sense why there's no bus or shuttle that goes from Bellevue to the airport. None. But it's how it was designed. Yep, it's how it was designed. Yep, Nebraska has Apple products. That's where you can go. You can go to Nebraska. The Apple people don't want you.
I mean, no. I mean, Best Buy is the same exact thing over on 72nd. So there are places that you can go. I'm just saying, I've always wondered why put it out so far But I mean, no, that does kind of.
There's a specific client base that they're targeting with that, who want to buy Apple products directly from the Apple store because they want the Apple experience. Um, I take my kids over to my kids go to West Side, which is one of the richer school districts in the state, and that's where I see all the Rivians and all the Teslas and all the Cybertrucks and all the Benzes and all the Beamers and all those Audis and stuff. That's where I see them, is at West Side, in the parking lot of West Side. Um, and that's a very, when you go out there, you're fully aware, like, okay, I'm at West Side. There's a $60 million sports complex they just built over there, building a new cafeteria on here. They have money. And so when you drive out there, you're very aware of who's around. And so I think the Apple store made that conscious decision. We're going to be, because back when, remember, I mean, Village Point ain't new anymore. Village Point's been around for a while. But when it was brand new, that was the elite place to shop in a lot of people's minds. I lived out there. Like, my apartment was like 5 minutes from Village Point. I didn't really, like, there's nothing for me to go there for. Like, I don't have any reason to go there. Maybe go to the movie.
I mean, you have that steakhouse over there, but again, you can only eat that so much.
Go to the video game store. Yeah. They used to have a restaurant that where the steakhouse is, where Saltgrass is. It's called Mimi's Cafe, and they used to have really good breakfast. I'll go over there. But when I went out to Village Point, I knew that there was nothing there for me. They didn't have the clothes that I wanted. I might be able to get some shoes, might be able to get some kicks out there, but that's about it. And so more times than not, if I wanted to go to the mall, I'll see either at Westroads or Oakview. Yeah. But they make this, the city is designed to keep people in specific areas of the city. And so that's why they always the joke about driving around Wild Black in Sarpy County, because it's always been a real thing as far as I've been alive. You know, like don't be careful driving over there after dark, because the buses don't run out there. And they're after a certain time frame, they're kind of used to the city slowing down a little bit and not having as much traffic. And so when you're out there on those roads, it's a lot easier for you to get singled out if you're driving around out there. But Bellevue, they didn't necessarily, I've heard people, they didn't necessarily want to be a bus route. They wanted to be, I forgot what kind of community they called it, but they didn't necessarily want all that stuff out there.
Well, what kind of community does this produce, Mr. Schultz?
Where
what kind of community does that?
It was like some kind of real estate term or whatnot, where it's like some bed and breakfast community or something along those lines, where they didn't necessarily, you know, they had an image that they wanted to maintain of it. And so, and it's kind of colliding with, you know, some of the financial underpinnings of it, because at the end of the day, you still do need people to be able to come there and work. And you need to have methods for people to come there and work. And a lot of times, big time employers, that's how they determine what city they're going to put their business in. How's the public transportation there? If we have staff here, can they get to and from work with ease without having to have a car? And so those are considerations that need to go into place. But Omaha is still not a walkable community. I mean, it's, and I don't know if it's ever going to be that, but that's just how the city is structured. That's how it keeps itself naturally segregated. If you limit access to people,
I think that's our word.
Yep.
Naturally segregated.
Yep. De facto segregated.
De facto segregated.
Yep. Some of them have, yeah. Some of them have contracts like the covenants and whatnot. You know, I know there was covenants in Omaha specifically where, you know, if you're black, you couldn't move to this neighborhood. The covenants wouldn't allow you to be sold the house. The bank wouldn't approve the loan.
So what would happen if you came in to buy a house, but they didn't know that who was buying it? Again, like let's say that you already had the money.
Yeah.
Then you use somebody else to go in and go check it out. Like, oh, okay. Paperwork goes through this and the other. You put the money up, and now you actually own that house. And now Monday morning, you see a family full of Negroes coming and they get out the van, and you like, hold on, I didn't sell it to you.
Well,
Technically, you did.
back then, I mean, I guess it'd be what's your tolerance for cross burnings on your lawn? Like, do you have a high threshold for that? Are you cool with that?
Right.
Now, is different kinds of way, always having the cops called on you and stuff like that. But back then it was, harassment. Your house might get burnt down overnight, stuff like that. That's how that's how they enforced it. And so, again, goes back to what we were talking about when society doesn't agree on the story it tells about itself anymore. Because as you start including more voices into the narrative of a country, the story has to change. The problem is some people don't want the story to change. They see the story shifting as this negative thing as opposed to the progression, the natural progress of events. And so now you have people that are fighting hard to hold on to a version of America that they grew up with that hasn't existed for a lot of people ever. But since they don't want to necessarily hear, and that's the other side, they don't necessarily want to hear the other side of people saying, well, that story don't make any sense. I never aligned. That's not what my experience was.
Right. So you say like make America great again. It's like great. When was it great? But it wasn't great for everybody.
Right.
So, I mean, now, but again, there's no problem with saying, you know what? You're right about that. Sorry about that. Let's make America great.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody in America would actually, which I think everybody would probably wear that hat. Like, if our objective is to make our country better in general, who wouldn't?
So I'm reminded of this essay I saw on YouTube from Folding Ideas. It's called In Search of a Flat Earth. And initially it just starts talking about flat earthers and stuff and his own little research that he did at this huge lake that he was close to in Canada or whatnot. But then it starts pivoting. Midway, you start feeling the pivot of what he's talking about when he's talking about a flat earth. And then instantly he goes into what was that entire QAnon, the QAnon cult and all the MAGA aligned kind of group thinking cults and stuff like that. And so the analogy he used to end the entire thing, Bob Gibson was harassed when he bought a Westmont Mall. Now, yeah, I used to drive up and down Bob Gibson Boulevard. My wife was pointing out the irony of that.
Okay, hold on. I'm looking at this. Oh, wow, he just died.
Yep. So the idea of the entire thing with Folding Ideas was what he was saying was these people, their entire modus operandi is we just want to make those people shut up over there. Life would be better if they would just shut up over there.
Right.
Talking about inequality and racism and police brutality. We wouldn't have these issues if they would just shut up. And so he took the concept of the flat earth and said, what they're doing is they're taking their ideology and hammering earth, hammering their worldview down into something that is flat. They're flattening their worldview so that it can align with the ideology that they already have in their head. So that's how they're creating their flat earth. It was really an interesting analogy the way he put it, because it went from flat earthers, like from the concept of the flat earthers and how the earth is flat and all this other stuff. And it talked about how people who are far on the fringes of ideology politically are essentially trying to hammer the earth, hammer the world and make it flatter so it matches their worldview of things. Really interesting. Folding Ideas. Check it out. It's called In Search of a Flat Earth if you ever want to spend some time with it.
Hold on. In Search of a Flat Earth?
Of a Flat Earth. But
and who's it by?
His name is Dan Olson, but the channel is Folding Ideas.
Okay. Folding Ideas. Okay, yeah.
Oh,
so
did you see My Omaha? I haven't been in the My Omaha group. I've seen it and I haven't signed up for it yet. Is that on Facebook? Mr. Schultz? I think it is. I think that's where I saw it. So, like I said, I know Forgotten Omaha has a lot of history in there, but I've gotten in, one of the things about Forgotten Omaha, my internet's kind of flaky, guys. One of the things is in Forgotten Omaha, I think I got myself into trouble talking about a lot of it wasn't, there was no representation of Black folks in Omaha. And so when I'm talking about some of the historical things that happened in Omaha for Black people, people did not like that. Oh no, the movie. I have not seen My Omaha, the movie. I've seen, there was something on PBS years and years ago where they talked about um, the segregation in Omaha and how the Black and Jewish communities used to live like door to door like neighbors and stuff, and how segregation altered the landscape. And then they talked about 1919, the Bloody Sunday in 1919, and then talked about the end of integration in Omaha. Because when my family came here, Omaha was more integrated than a lot of cities, but within a couple of years, we were dealing with Omaha's version of Jim Crow, which was segregation by law. And so it was interesting. I gotta pull up My Omaha. Let me look that one up, Mr. Schultz. I'm putting that on my notes.
You
here.
know what? Actually, that's really funny that he mentioned that because my friend Leo was in this. He's like in the. Yeah, he's actually in the poster of it.
Okay. So yeah, I'm gonna check it out. I got that written down to check out because I'm probably gonna be doing something a little bit more long form about my combined theory of Omaha and a lot of Midwestern cities being just gigantic criminal enterprises. Like I've been writing that in the background of all the other stuff I got going on. And so I probably need to sit down and check that one out.
So how do you watch this?
What, Folding Ideas?
No, the My Omaha.
Is it on streaming?
Um,
Oh, this is a recent. Yeah, this is 2025. This is recent.
Yeah.
Website. So I'm gonna have to check this out. I did not know this existed.
So good.
So where can I watch it? Let me pull it up. Where to watch? Oh, Netflix. Okay, so Netflix, Amazon Prime.
Wow, this is like big.
Yeah. Huh. I'm gonna sit down and watch this one.
Oh man, I'm gonna have to watch that, dude. That's crazy. And my guy Leo, look at you, bro.
Is it still showing? It's still in theaters. Okay. I'm about to talk to wife for a date night too. Let's see if that'll fly.
Oh man, what?
I owe her a movie.
Oh, do you?
Yeah. I don't think she's gonna go for it. I'm the documentary guy. Like I will sit and watch documentaries. I will sit there and watch documentaries all the time. For her, she's kind of into like she'll watch a true crime, like she'll get involved into a true crime story, but documentaries aren't always her thing unless it's something that interests her. I'm interested in this, so I'm definitely going to see if I can check this out.
This isn't on Netflix.
Like, it says it's in theaters in Lincoln now. I'm not trying to pull up too much because what'll happen is we'll try to pull some over into stream, and then our stream will get flagged.
Oh, okay.
We'll get a copyright.
Yeah, no, I'm looking at it on another
film streams. So it looks like it's at film streams, a couple of other things. All right. So yeah, we'll track it down, Mr. Schultz. Thanks for the recommendation. I'm definitely going to watch that.
Yeah, no, for sure. Okay, yeah, I'll ask. Oh, dude, this thing's stuck on me. I'll ask. Matter of fact, here, I'll get Leo up and ask him.
All right. So, but yeah, so one of the things is, and that's the conceit is, you're having the conversation, you're having the clash of these ideological forces where one side has this enforced perception of American exceptionalism and the by any means might makes right kind of view of America, and the other side of it has been on the other side of that might mix right America thing. So you're talking about Native communities, you're talking about Black communities, you're talking about a lot of Mexican communities and Chicano communities that ended up getting basically enveloped by America. Um, and so, Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, California, all that stuff that used to be Mexico, they essentially got enveloped by America. And so there's families' histories and their family stories are going to be different. Chinese descendants of Chinese immigrants that came over to work on the railroads, their story of America, their family story of America is going to be different than other people's version of it. Problem is, it becomes a problem for people when they start hearing those other stories and they think that either invalidates or challenges their story, as opposed to looking at it as another chapter in the book. They think that this Black person or this Chinese person or this whoever is trying to supplant my story of America and the narrative I've created for America. And you're trying to tell me that my America isn't this, that, and the third. And it's like, no, we're just saying here's a different viewpoint of it. The concept of what is the Fourth of July to a slave, right? What is Independence Day to an enslaved person? That concept. And so a lot of people don't know how to deal with it. Again, here's the thing, and this is what I'm realizing on social media. There's a lot of people that have existed their entire adult lives and never heard an opinion that is counter to something that they have a core belief in. And so when they intercept one of those, when they interact with one of those, they instantly go into a rage and paragraphs and walls of text and all that other stuff. And for some people, that's where that palagenic ultranationalism stuff kicks in, where they're saying, you're trying to take away my God-given right to blah, 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 blah. And it's not really connected with anything you actually said. Because it's challenging their nationalist world view of this society. And they can't deal with it. Most people can't handle contradictory thoughts.
Right. Two juxtapositioning ideas. Yeah, at the same time. Yeah.
And that's where I've seen so many social media crash outs behind that. Where you just cannot deal with somebody who has a worldview that is the antithesis of yours. And it turns into this long, or you can't deal with the fact that your worldview as you see it is something that you and a few other people have, and most people don't align with what you're saying. I've seen those kind of crash outs happen too, where you realize that all of a sudden you're in the ideological minority, where you thought that just because you were surrounded by friends that agree with you, you thought that you were the majority viewpoint on it. So anyway, let me jump down because we've talked on a lot of this stuff.
Okay, so where are you at now in your points?
So I've gone through countries run on stories before they run on systems. When stories collapse, people turn on each other. America no longer agrees on what it is or what it's for. Country cannot agree on its own purpose, the American narrative, blah, blah, blah. I think where I'm at, and let's jump down to section 3. We're talking about fragmentation.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Where everybody has their own version of America. And this is kind of what we've been talking about. Again, we talked about, I watched a video where they're talking about how fantastic wealth distorts people's frame of reference. Full disclosure, you can see me for 2 seconds in the movie. Have to go. Glad to listen. Thanks for the compliment. Take it easy, Mr. Schultz. I would appreciate you tuning in.
Thank you, sir.
So, one of the things is, so we talk about what happens when these disparate versions of America collide with each other. But then you also understand that wealth does play a factor into it. Shoot, okay, I'll run it down to you like this, Fearless, because you've been in both sides of this. I remember when I first met somebody who tried to tell me that in their family it was normal for them to take a European vacation every summer.
Like to go to Europe.
to go to Europe, like a full blown get your family out of this country, travel together, like the Home Alone European vacation, right?
Gotcha.
For them, it was normal. Like that was nothing for them. That was their baseline expectation for life. We might get to Kansas City. My family might get to Des Moines. And that was it. If I like when we went out to New York, when my mom and I went out to New Jersey and New York, that was Christmas. That was all the other stuff I had, all the other stuff we had planned for the year went into that trip.
Gotcha.
And for them, that person could not conceive of a world like that. What do you mean you didn't take family vacations to Europe? That's not normal, bro. That's normal for you. And that's fine. That is the standard of life you're used to. Most people ain't living like that. And so what we're having, I think what we're seeing right now is that's stratified across generations, right? So your parents' ideal of what financially is normal, house, vacations, all that other stuff, is a pipe dream to the kids as adults. And now you're really starting to see the fangs come out. Because they're like, what do you mean I grew up like this? I can't live in the neighborhood that I grew up in. What do you mean? What do you mean I can't do the same things for my family that my parents did for me? And so now we're seeing different layers to it. So what are your thoughts on it? Like when people, like all these different iterations of America, and one of the reasons why I'm asking you is, you know, you reading all these different books, you kind of get different perspectives on different slices of life in America as it is. What do you see as the intersection with these? Like when people, when these narratives about the country they live in collide and they don't agree with each other, what do you see?
I guess I look at it from a different cultural standpoint. I mean, because we're not all gonna see things the same exact way. In the U.S., we have what 30? Excuse me, we have 50 different cities. States, yep. Right? But then in Africa, they have 54 different Americas.
Mm-hmm.
Think about that, 54 different Americas. When we say, and we call ourselves the United States because we're all united under this particular continent. Mm-hmm. Not because we're all united because we all agree upon the same shit. We don't. Right? And so if we don't agree, if people in California don't agree with the same stuff that they do in Texas, all right, cool. People in Texas don't agree with what they do in Alabama, cool. Mm-hmm. People in New York don't agree with what people do in Baltimore. So it kind of is what it is, though. So I think though that we all, I'm not gonna lie to you, man. I really don't know what to think about that. Like in general, because we all see things differently.
That's a fair answer.
Like when I get home, when my kid gets in the car, we get in the car and we talk. Hey, how was school? Do you have any homework? This, that, and the other. But my son knows that as dad, I don't give. Here's the thing. Let me rephrase that. My son has a thing where it takes him a little bit of time to learn something. Mm-hmm. The one thing that I started to understand about my son is that it's not that it takes him a long time to learn stuff. It takes him a long time to learn shit that he ain't interested in. He's playing a video game now, the Avatar game. Mm-hmm. Like, is it difficult? He's like, yeah, it really is. But give it some time, he's going to beat the hell out of it. And I'm reading Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome by Dr. Joy DeGroy.
DeGroy, yep.
I'm reading that right now. And one of the things that she talked about in her book was, and she was talking about how they were talking about medication or whatever. They were talking about barbiturates and what is it?
Acetaminophen.
Acetaminophen, right? And there was these people who came in to kind of observe what she was doing, and she had given them the paper too, and she overheard them saying that they're not going to learn this. I don't even know, and um, I don't even know why they're even teaching this. And so what she did, she's like, you know what? I'm going to show them that my kids will get this. But she didn't show it by just giving them this piece of paper and then explaining what the differences are. You know what she did?
What she do?
She went in and she told them a story about this woman named Barbara. Now, Barbara was a drug addict. And every time you saw her, she was kicking stuff. She was this, that, and the other, blah, blah, blah. Well, one day, Barbara grabs she's walking around with a golf club. She sees this car, this Cadillac rims on it, this and the other. She takes this thing. Hold on 1 second. And she takes this thing and this golf club, and here, I'm sorry, let me put my phone on. God damn it, she takes out the golf club and she starts beating the shit out of this man's car. Right? I mean, like tearing this man's car up. So the guy, and it's her and a few other kids, and they all like, oh my God, like this is crazy. So the guy comes home, right? And he sees his car, he sees Barbara, and you know what he does?
What?
Walks in the house very calmly. He comes back out the house very calmly. Now they think that he's just grabbing her and talking to her sternly. He's stabbing her. He went in and got a knife, came back out, and he's sticking her, right? She sees this, and they just book it home. She runs in the house, and she tells her mom exactly what happened. Barbara got stabbed by this dude because she did all this other stuff. So later on, they go back down there to go see where all this stuff is, right? And they see a couple cops, but no, nothing too bad, right? And they look, and the car's gone, Barbara's gone, the guy's gone, right? They're like, what the hell happened over here? So what happened is that Barbara, she didn't die, she was still alive, right? So she's climbing and banging on people's door for them to call 911 to get her into the hospital, right? So they come and pick her up. But here's the thing, she was on barbiturates.
Oh.
So what do barbiturates do? They block off your pain receptors.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And once those pain receptors are down, you are up or whatever, you can do they're down. People can do whatever they want to do to you, and it's not going to do a bit of good because your body doesn't realize what's happening to it. So they get her to the hospital, they get her fixed up, this, that, and the other. Once that shit wears off, then the pain sets in. The whole class. So she said, so what do barbiturates do? She said, they're downers. What does that mean? That means you ain't going to feel no pain. So by giving them this, now when she gives them the paper, they're going to know exactly what this stuff is. And she said, it has to be something that's symbiotic. It has to be something that they understand that's in their world.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Because she said that the kids that I'm getting in here are asking the same questions, which is, why do I need to learn this? What am I learning this for? Why am I learning this? And when you're looking at it from that standpoint, bro, that's crazy. When you're looking at it from the standpoint of the kids are all asking the same question, why do I need to learn this? Because they don't understand why this Why I need to learn this for my life? How does this help me? Learning about what is the first acetaminophen and barbiturates, they understand the difference between them now.
Right.
Acetaminophen is going to bring you up. Barbiturates will bring you down. And bringing you down, what's that going to do? That's going to tear up. It's going to basically make sure that you can get out here and go do whatever you need to go do.
Right.
But then those acetaminophen will bring you up. It's going to make you feel joyful. It's going to make you do this. It's going to make you do that. Now they know that. So now the people that walked into that class saying that these kids aren't going to learn this, they get to walk out with their tails stuck between their legs because those kids did learn it. And not only that, but the people that were sitting there talking shit about them, they got to learn it from a different standpoint. So to me, when I look at a lot of kind of what's going on, I have to look at it from that standpoint, which is, number one, you get exactly what you pay for.
Mm-hmm.
My son, we were talking about this, I think, this morning. And he's telling me, Dad, I can't wait to go to college. I can't wait to go to college. And I'm like, son, like, buddy, you barely getting through the eighth grade. So yeah, I know, but college, I know I'm gonna do well there. And I'm just like, dude, I mean, what can I tell him?
Well, I have okay, so don't get too disheartened because I have a friend who is kind of like that, where school is really.
But that's my point, though. Yeah. I know that something in him is like, no, I don't. This ain't shit.
Yeah,
it's when I get there. It's when I get to do all my learning.
Yeah,
because I was the same way.
Well, maybe the connection for it might be, okay, well, this is your gatekeeper. Like, this is the gatekeeper BS that you got to go through in order to get to college. You gotta do this. It's just not fun. It's not. I've had a conversation. Literally, I've had the conversation with my daughter. Dad, why do I need to learn this? This is stupid. Because this is the stuff that you need to learn in order to make it to where you want to be. And sometimes the things, I didn't have a whole lot of use for geometry. But one thing, I had a cool ass teacher who made it fun. And two, I just knew in order to get to college, I had to have a geometry credit. And that's what you got to do. Just got to do what you got to do.
Right. I mean, and here's the thing. And I tell my son, too, I'm going to be honest. I tell my son, it's to waste your time.
Yeah.
It's to occupy the time that you're there. It's just like the reason why you read a huge 300 or 400 page book for the most part. You don't need to write all that stuff in there. Most books, for the most part, unless they're like fictional, they only need to be about 100 pages, if that.
Yeah.
To tell you everything you need to know. The reason why some of these books are 200, 300, 400 pages it's for fluff reasons. That's it. It's just to put the shit in there.
Well, sometimes you do learn, like, there's stuff I've learned that I have no use for, that I just enjoy having the knowledge for. And sometimes it's just
right, but it's not no 400 or 500 pages of stuff. So again, you can cut it down to 1 to 200.
That's true.
And that's all I'm saying. And shit, in speed reading, what do you take out? You take out the of, is, ands, all the fluff words.
True.
You take that out. Once you take that out, you can go through a book quick as shit. That's all they're teaching you to do. And you're basically just kind of putting those words, putting those things into context of where you need them to go. Because the mind will automatically fill in the gaps. That's what your mind does.
Well, and one of the things is, because we're on this thread, I meant to bring it up, but this is an aside, but it's something else I wanted to talk about. We talk about the adult reading level in this country. I mean, it's dismal. It's dismal, and so I think we're moving more towards a brevity-driven society, where get it done, say it in less words than you need. And I think that's kind of what we're driven towards. I don't always 100% know if that's a good or bad thing. Sometimes, yeah, cutting straight to the point is getting straight to the point is beneficial, but sometimes the journey, the story that comes along with getting to the point is more important than the point in and of itself. So I think we're driven in that brevity driven society because fewer and fewer adults, like, I don't think it's even a majority now that have comprehension above a 6th grade reading level.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Hold on. Is how bad is reading? Hold on.
They just released something talking about literacy levels in the United States. But while you look that up, I want to kind of go, I want to throw this out here, throw this idea.
Go ahead.
Okay. So we talk about intersecting narratives, right? And this is kind of this is something here. So there is a group of self-emancipated people from Africa. Like during slavery, they self-emancipated, which means they rebelled and either killed the plantation owner or escaped, and they formed they formed their own communities, and these were the Maroons, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's also where you find a lot of Gullah people, Geechee Gullah. Those are the descendants of a lot of the Maroon-based cultures, and so they have a lot of their own. They even have their own way of speaking, their own dialect of American English, and stuff like that. So if we're talking about intersecting narratives, imagine you are descended from Geechee Gullah, right? Your family, your ancestors were self-emancipated. They lived in freedom colonies, of nearby plantations to free more people and stuff. What is your family story of America versus somebody who's descended from the landholders, the landowners, and the story that they pass down to their children about what America is?
Well, what is mine personally, or
well, I'm saying just as a thought experiment, how radically different were those two stories of America that took place in the same time, in the same location, just with different groups of people? How radically different are the stories and narratives that they build about this country? How different would they be?
I mean, bro, like that's, I mean, of course, I mean, and if you look at like Iowa versus Nebraska, I mean, we're right, Omaha's right next door to Council Bluffs.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't do the same stuff at all.
Right.
We don't do any of the same type of, I mean, some stuff we kind of do, but we still got to mess with each other, in which for the most part we do. But for the most part, culturally,
Mm-hmm.
no.
Well, and that's what I'm saying.
No, not at all. Like we're gonna have two totally different makeup groups in general.
So, but the question I'm asking is, the point I'm making is, most people don't think about that. They don't think about, how is this person's version of this country different than mine? And is that what we're really arguing about? Are we arguing about what is factual and true, or are we arguing about what is the perception that they have of this country from their lived experience and the way that they grew up and the stories that they've told internally? And I think a lot of people don't really grasp that side of things. So when they start looking at this person over here on the other side, the reason why they're on the other side is because they were immersed in an entire culture. They're acculturated differently to this society than you were. And people don't embrace that. They see that as a negative thing. And they think that America has a homogenous kind of culture, and it really doesn't. America is a melting pot of various cultures. I have a friend of mine. She had no idea. This is when Juneteenth was on the national stage. She had no idea that Black Omahans have had a Juneteenth parade for as long as I can physically remember. She thought this was all new. I said, "Oh, absolutely not. This has been happening since I was little.
Yeah,
this has always been something that's been present in the community." But she said it. She's like, "I grew up in Papillion. I had no idea what happened in North Omaha." No. Yeah. Like even explaining, if I said jitney cab to you, you know what that is.
Yeah, because it used to be over off of, what is that, Lake?
Mm-hmm.
No, because they used to be over at the Mad Dad's place.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. And
Even
that
you
was
say,
the
even
one.
you say Mad Dads,
Yeah.
but and me and Fearless were sitting here talking about jitneys. Y'all wouldn't have any concept of it. We're talking about jitneys in Omaha. You wouldn't have any concept of what we were talking about.
Hey,
Jit,
you want to know what's funny? Jitney came before the cab service did.
yes, jitney was the hood, was kind of our version of a cab or an Uber.
Mm-hmm.
Jitney driver take you anywhere,
Yep.
and so but that's a North Omaha thing. There's a lot of
Yeah.
people who
You
work
call
in
them up and be like, North Side.
yeah,
Like, hey, can you come get me? Where you at? Yeah, we'll have somebody there in 15 minutes.
yep.
Oh my God, I loved it.
And so, but there's an entire segment of Omaha, people that grew up in Omaha, lifelong residents of Omaha, multiple generations in Omaha, but they didn't grow up in North Omaha. And so they would have no concept of what we're talking about when we talk about jitneys or the soul roll man or any of that stuff. They have no concept. And we all grew up in the same, we're all around the same age demographic, but our version of our life in this country is completely different.
Yeah. But that's gonna be like that. And and again, that is the biggest problem that I see with us here in America, but in a lot of different other places too. And that's kind of what I was talking about, we we broad stroke a whole entire continent, or we broad stroke a whole entire state, or a whole entire people as being just like everybody else. And it's like, no, that has nothing to do with one thing or the other. This group over here, this is what they do. If I walked out, like I just grabbed a pair of dope mans,
Mm-hmm.
right? All red ones with the white swoosh, right? Now you know exactly what I'm talking about,
Right.
right?
I can visualize it.
Depending on where you from, depending on where you live, you have no idea what I was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
If you didn't grow up in the same place that we grew up, you're not gonna know what I'm talking about. I say dope mans, and you not gonna know what I'm talking about,
Right.
right? But for us, we know it's a certain shoe
Mm-hmm.
that looks a certain particular way, and for the most part, you really can't find them unless you're looking for some white or black ones. But getting some red ones without the Stranger Things stuff on them that I got, oh my, like what? Stop, right? But that's kind of what I'm talking about. Broad stroking everybody that like we're gonna know stuff.
And this is where you've actually moved on to the next point, where grievance fills in the gaps of knowledge. And so we talked about it a couple of weeks ago, where people are mad at these migrant communities because they're like, well, these migrants come over here and they have money and they have X, Y, and Z, and they're already able to fund their own businesses and everything. The government just gives them that. No, 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 that's not what happens. In a lot of migrant communities, a lot of immigrant communities, you could talk about Asian, more Southern Asian in that Pacific Island area. You could talk about African. You can talk about Caribbean. They have a lot of these communities. Each one have them a different name for it. There's an internalized loan system that they have, where everybody puts the money in the pot. Somebody new comes over. They get the money to start what they need to start. They start it, and then they pay the money back, so it's available for the next person. Had you known that, your entire worldview would have been upset because you built an entire worldview of these people are getting something we're not, and I'm an American citizen. Why don't I get access to it? The reason why you don't get access to it is because you've been acculturated not to understand how collective action works. You've been acculturated to think that individualism is the hallmark of an advanced society. And you don't have a perspective in that community of how they perceive. You bring somebody in, they get a pot of the money, they get a piece of the money to start their venture so that they can be successful or to go to school. You know what I'm saying? So they've already pre-planned it and they've already pre-funded it.
Right.
You could have one. Your family could easily have one. You and your community group could have one. But think about how many people's minds you would have to shift on that one, as opposed to them having this expectation. We're in a foreign country. We need to band together, let's pool our money together, and then we loan it to whoever comes in. Somebody comes in, moves to the country, immigrates. Here's this pot of money. Go start your restaurant. Go start your hair braiding business. Go start whatever. Go to school. whatever. And then once you get on, you pay the money back into the pot. Now, there are people that don't even know. There's probably people out there that this is their very first time hearing this. And they've been walking around this worldview that people that immigrate to this country automatically get handed money. Well, kind of. What they're getting handed is money that their community has collected for their success. And you could have that worldview, or you could have that as a reality in your life. All you got to do is just commit to it and gather the kind of people that will make that thing happen collectively.
Right.
But
I mean, yeah, but here they're not going to do that because that's what they depend on banks for, and this, that, and the other. We live in a very individualistic society.
And that's what I'm saying.
In America.
And that's what
it's not community driven, it's individualistic.
Well,
that's how we live.
And there are remnants of it. Like when you talk to marginalized groups, there are remnants of the collective community. The idea that two of my cousins I grew up with are like my siblings. Because extended family.
Right.
I've met people literally that don't even know, like they don't even know who their cousins are, or they don't engage with their cousins. Me and my cousins are all like siblings because that's how we were kind of raised. And the reason why we're kind of raised like that is because our parents were raised, all the cousins were raised in a house together like siblings. And so our extended family looks a little bit different. And so there are elements of it, where, and I found this out as a caseworker. It's not like it was new knowledge, but one of the things I had to explain to some of my other workers is, do you know how many informal adoptions go on in the hood?
Yeah, man.
Where the auntie just takes over and it's just mom all of a sudden.
Man.
And it's not on paper. There's no home study. There's no nothing there, but it exists because
dude, that's a good point. Yeah,
it's informal, but there are people that have no concept of what that actually means. I had a supervisor, man. Oh, free game. You're gonna laugh at this one. So I had a family on my caseload. Mom had just gotten out of jail, and I'm trying to get her established. We're trying to get her a house, get her set up so that she can have a place for her daughter to live with her. And so mom just got out. It was drug charges, and drug charges, when you're a felon with drug charges, it's really, really hard for you to get anything.
It's rough.
And so I'm working to get mom stuff. And one of the things that I took to my supervisor is I asked for bus tickets so mom could get, to job interviews and whatnot, and, make runs to the store, do the things that normal functioning people have to be able to do in order to maintain a household. And so she tries to hand me a thing of like a book of 30 bus tickets. And I said, well, I could just buy the monthly pass. It's cheaper. There's not a finite amount of rides she can go on. She can tend to whatever she needs throughout the day, because this book isn't going to last more than 18 days. And our supervisor looked at me. She was like, I was like, it's cheaper to buy the monthly pass. Like, the math even works out. And the supervisor looked at me. She was like, I'm not going to give somebody unlimited bus rides. And I was like, have you ever ridden a city bus before? You think that's some glamorous thing? Like, ooh, we on the bus now. Like, it's not like you're already on the bus, bro. Like, it's not terrible. But like, I used to have to ride the bus every single day. It wasn't, I didn't feel like I was in a limo being shuttled around. Never. It still sucked, and it still restricted what I could do. And so giving her unlimited rides, you're seeing it as, I don't want to give her an unlimited anything because that just enables her. And I'm sitting there like, but if she has unlimited rides, then that means that she can go and do her errands throughout the day and be present to supervise her daughter when her daughter gets home.
That's crazy.
As opposed to trying to hook rides with this person or catch a ride with this person and stuff like that. That'll take your entire day. I say, we got to look at transfers and all this other stuff. And I'm sitting there talking to her, trying to explain it to her. And since she's never been in the community and has never been in a position where she had to take a bus as her only form of transport.
She's never going to understand that, man.
She had, and I fought her to the ground on this one, and she stood her ground. I'm not big into giving people unlimited rides.
Sad, like, dude, that's not like an unlimited ride. Like, but at the same time, though, that's like you talking to this woman about the hot comb.
Yeah.
She's not gonna understand what you're talking about. What? Who would even do that?
And
What are
see,
you talking about? So it's a cultural thing, bro.
and so this is right before I
And
became
that's black and white
this is right before I
and
be,
Mexican.
this is
So
right
we can get that, but she's not part of that culture.
this is right before I became a supervisor. And that was a learning moment for me as a supervisor, because in my mind, I'm like, okay, this should be a learning experience for you. You have somebody who actually is from North Omaha, who has ridden the bus and knows what this actually means. Maybe you need to listen more than you talk on this subject.
Right.
And that was a moment for me. If one of my staff came to me with a cultural moment that I wasn't aware of, this is where I fall back and it's my turn to learn,
Mm-hmm.
so I can better help the families that we're serving. She was not willing to do that. She was
Mm-hmm.
going to fight me to the ground on this and not yield any ground. This is the same one that told me. I was sitting there explaining to her. I said, "Yeah, um, the kids' families from the projects, the gang shit." And it's like, he's from projects or whatnot. This is cousins and everything. They all live around him and everything. It's very difficult to get him out of that. It's very difficult to get him out of the environment because he walks outside and his entire friends and family
Right
group
there.
is in the gang, right? And she looked at me. She's like, "Well, why doesn't Dad just move?" Oh, why didn't I think of that? Like, because everybody can just move. Like, and I had to say, he has a daughter who goes to North. She's about to graduate this year. If you ever been to his house, he is one of them brothers that absolutely, his spare time, he's fixing stuff on the house, is painted, the garden's cultivated, everything. He puts a lot of energy into maintaining this house. The house is his pride and joy. And he doesn't have a lot of money. He's on disability. So, but he could just up and move to West Omaha. Is that the life you live? Well, if it was my kids and stuff like that, I would move. I said, no, you wouldn't. If you were in his seat, because you wouldn't have the resources to do it. But this is where that thinking comes from. Because in her world, if you have a problem in your community, you can just pack up and move. And that
Right.
solves all the problems. So that was a learning moment for me and I'm like, but this also goes back to what we're saying. The version of America that she grew up in was not, um, didn't exist or didn't coexist with the version of America that I grew up in.
Right.
And her gap gave her resentment of these people. Am I going too far with that one?
No, it isn't.
Does it sound like it's, because to me it felt like her gap of knowledge turned into resentment of this population of people that she didn't quite understand. And so you're going to punish them by not providing this child services to pull him out of this, extract him out of the community because he's begging to go to Boys Town. We're not going to accommodate or try to facilitate that because he was asking for help to actually get out, and Dad didn't have the resources. Or we're just going to arbitrarily limit this woman's access to bus rides for no apparent reason because you rather pay more for a book of 30 tickets as opposed to one unlimited ride pass. And
Mhm.
so, but she's going to punish those people because she had a lack of knowledge of what their narrative, where her narrative ended and theirs began. She thought somebody's trying to get over on her.
Yeah, one of the things that Dr. Umar Johnson was talking about is that, the difference between a racist and a bigot. And I loved how he said it. He said that a bigot, he said that, man, how did he say it? He said that he said bigots are not racist, but all races are bigots
Mm-hmm.
or whatever. He said that basically the difference is that that certain individual, I think it was the bigot doesn't give, the bigot itself doesn't care about um where you, no, the bigot is a piece of shit. The bigot does care that you're black. The bigot does care about you getting resources. The bigot does care that you're up here where you should be down there. They
Mm-hmm.
do not like you. They don't want nothing to do with you. This and the other, blah 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 blah. They are the antithesis of being a piece of shit, right? Now the racists, on the other hand, doesn't always necessarily mean that they don't like you. That's not their objective.
Mm-hmm.
A racist will hang out with you, they'll marry you, they'll fuck you, they'll do
Mm-hmm.
all kind of different stuff. But the problem is that with race, the racist wants just a few things. They want the resources, they want the opportunities, they
Mm-hmm.
want all the privileges, and they want the economics to go with all of it.
Yep.
And then they also want to be first with all those things.
Top of the
That is the
hierarchy.
top of the hierarchy. So that is the difference between your broke bigot. Because a lot of them are broke as shit. They're angry for a whole nother reason than
Mm-hmm.
the racists would be. Racists, they just want the resources, the opportunity, the privileges, as well as the economic income that comes with that. Like they that's what they're looking for. So they can still marry somebody who's black and still be a racist,
Mm-hmm.
technically, because as long as I own all the other stuff, I can make love to you. I could chill with you. I can do that. I can even build with you. But you know as well as I do that all that growth is coming with us. Yeah, it's,
Right.
matter of fact, like if you think about it, I was just talking to a friend of mine and we were discussing like why it is that Catholic priests um do not get married and don't have kids. Well, here's the thing. There are some Catholic priests that are married with kids. Every one of them were married with kids before they became priests. Now, if you take that whatever that thing is that they do to become a priest, you can no longer have children. You can no longer have a wife. Do you know why?
Why?
Because Jesus never said anything like that. Matter of fact, it never talks about that in the Quran or the Bible either. You want to know why that is? Because the Catholics greed. Because when you die, they want they want whatever money you had, they want whatever land you have, because it all resorts back to the church. That's the reason. And if you're married, they don't get any of that stuff because it goes to your family. That's the reason why that's the reason why priests cannot get married. That's the reason why they can't have children. So again, it has nothing to do with God. It has nothing to do with religion. It has everything to do with resources, opportunity, privilege, and economics.
Okay.
That's it. Hey, I call it that. He again, it's not mine. It's Dr. Umar, but I call it that they want the rope, right? And I don't mean. I mean you. And think about it. A rope can break your neck or it can save your neck. You know what I'm saying? It just depends on basically on who's using it. But that's kind of what you're doing now.
Yeah.
Or we're talking about the difference between bigotry and racism.
So, in that story, you're talking about, people, racist people that are married. Ooh, shoot, racist people that are married to people that are of the race that they're racist against. I had a parent. Um, she she had a mixed child, right? And this child was the only mixed kid in the family. And she would, when she get mad, she would call him the ugliest slurs, like slurs, like hard R slurs. This is like 13, 14-year-old boy. Mama cuss him out, call him all the slurs and everything else. Um, Segregated him from his peers. Like she had segregation in the house. He wasn't allowed to be around, and it wasn't any safety issues. She just didn't want him around his siblings, his white siblings. Did all this stuff, and you're sitting there like, she hated this kid. She'd still fuss over him. Like if he went outside without a coat, she'd turn into mom, regular mom.
Hmm.
Fuss over him, make sure that he's fed, make sure he has all the stuff. She'd still try to baby him at times. Um, but the disconnect that she had was she was so mad. Like she hated black people, but then she had a black person in her house, and it wasn't reconciling. And so the worker was confused. The worker I had on the case, she was absolutely like, "What the fuck?" Like she is just confusing. And I'm like, racism doesn't make any sense. I said, because here's the thing, because we had to do like
But see, that's the thing. That's not necessarily that's not racist shit. That's just bigotry.
yeah,
You're a
well,
fucking bigot.
and well, and the thing I was going at, she was actually
Prejudice.
she was actually
Yes.
but she was actually utilizing her authority as her prejudice as an impetus to restrict him from things. And so that's where I'm like racist. But what
Yeah,
I'm saying,
well, okay, I got you.
what I'm saying is none of that. It does. It's like it's not logical. It doesn't follow a train of logic because she is confused because when we got when we did what used to be the protective capacity assessments and stuff like that, where you're identifying this parent's alignment with protecting their child. She scored really high on everything. Like she was in line with protecting the child. Like she checked all the marks of what on paper a good parent is supposed to be. But she was racist to her core. She would call this child, and this is a kid, she's calling him hard slurs, ugly slurs, slurs that would lead to a fist fight anywhere else. But she would daily, every time he pissed her off, she would call him that. But then she's still fussing over him, making sure that he's wearing a hat and making sure that he has his jacket on because he's going to get his death of cold. And, making sure that he ate breakfast and doing all the things that mom does, or mom is supposed to do to fret over their kids. But she would also call him all the slurs. And so it was like, and the worker's like, I don't understand how this works. And I'm like, it doesn't. Because what you're trying to apply a logical frame to something that has no logic. It completely lacks logic. Fearless, you're kind of off to the side on your camera. Sorry. Yep. So
better.
Yep, that's better.
Okay.
And so I'm trying to explain to her, like, nah, it doesn't. You're right. None of this makes sense. And you're right to question it because it doesn't follow the lines of logic. But it's like you have to get out of trying to form logic around an illogical situation. What her anger was, she was very angry at this kid's dad for leaving her. And instead of making it a her and him thing, she generalized it to all black males except the ones that she likes. And so I was fine with her by her standard. I was fine. And I wasn't one of them. But it was those other ones. And the problem was she would see those other ones in her own child. And it's like, there's no way that this kid is merging. Either this kid is going to be the most well-balanced adult that you've ever met, the most regulated, well-regulated adult, well-adjusted adult that you've ever met in your entire life.
Or he's gonna be a fucking monster.
Or it's gonna go horribly wrong. There's no two ways about it. Either you're gonna be so regulated and so well balanced that it's almost a disability in and of itself, or this kid's gonna go off the rails because there's no framework to provide a nurturing childhood for him. It's every time mom smothers him with attention, she's calling him all these horrible slurs. And she didn't even see anything wrong with it. She's like, I get angry with him, and everybody gets angry, but everybody doesn't use a bunch of slurs on their child, ma'am. Like, I don't understand what their disconnect is with it. Well, I mean, but people get angry and cuss. That's just what happens in my family. But this isn't just cussing your kid out.
Right.
You're calling him all the worst things that you can think of in society, and you're hoping he doesn't internalize it. And it's like,
I mean, but you want him to internalize it because otherwise you wouldn't call him all that shit.
Exactly. And that's what I'm trying to explain to my work. This is not logical. It flies in the face of logic. You have to put your desire to make this rational and logic. You have to put that in a box and stuff it under the bed because it's not going to happen in this situation. It doesn't make any sense. And so that's all I'm saying is
that's sad, man.
It is. And It's the intersection of it's the intersection of who we are versus who we aspire to be. And who she wanted to be was a good mom, but who she was a mom that would call her son really ugly racist slurs. So, all right, so
yeah, I think we'd have a bit of a problem talking about kid like that.
Yeah, and that's what I'm like.
I'm not even gonna lie to you. We'd have a whole problem. My son would never be at that house again.
Right. And so that's what, and so like I said, those two things were in conflict internally in their home, and it created dysfunction. And so that's what we're talking about when your narratives collide with one another, and you don't give room for somebody else's narrative to inform yours. You're setting it up. You're setting it up for a conflict, especially when, and I hate to put it to you like this, when you are in the historical, you're in historical first, like you're in at the top of the hierarchy historically, and an oppressed person is sharing their narrative with you. This is your opportunity to learn something that you may not have known.
Yeah, you know what? You know, one of the things that I loved about Davin, an aunt of mine, that told me from a very early age that majority of the stuff that these people are going to try to make you believe something different. So she exposed me to African type stuff like a long time ago. It told me how like the English couldn't wipe themselves properly and where the plagues came from, that when they got here and they were so riddled with diseases and all kinds of shit, they wiped out half the people that was here or whatever. And then she says to me, do you honestly think that these people or these type of individuals would be rated first on anything? She said, matter of fact, even the colleges. She said, you know where college comes from? Obviously, no, not at all. She said, a college, if you think about it, goes from study to study. The first university was in Africa. Matter of fact, the first university was Alexandria.
Right.
That we know about. And that's where everybody gets. Matter of fact, Plato and Socrates and all of them, they used to have to get, Zeno had to get special permission to go into Africa to go learn. Think about that. They had to have special permission to go learn. There was nothing coming out of Greece. There was nothing coming out of Athens before they went to Africa to go learn. In Africa, they didn't just have colleges, they had universities which studied the universe.
Yep.
They didn't have 4-year degrees. You had to go to school. I think it was like 40 years.
Wow.
Yes, sir. They were in college most of their lives. And then when they left, when you would hear about the Moors going into Italy to go teach, with the blacks going into Greece and Britain and all them places to go teach and take over. That's why they were able to do so, because they knew everything under the sun.
Right.
That's why Aborigines out of Australia have some of the same stuff that they learned back in the day, because they were taught that stuff. And you know what all these places have in common?
What?
Africa. Every one of them. There's nothing that you'll find in another continent or country that you wouldn't have found there first. Nothing. Well, so again, my point is this. I understand certain people's story. And the other thing is with that is that I understand that a story has to mean something. It has to be something that's real. It has to be something that's internalized. And if I can get you what Hitler said, if I can get you to believe something over and over and over and over again, all I have to do is just keep saying it, and eventually you're going to believe it. But all I got to do is just keep telling you a lie over and over and over, and eventually you'll believe it. Yeah. But the only difference is that you can keep telling me a lie, but I still know that you're a fucking liar. in general, bro. Here's the thing: I don't even have to know that you lied about this thing over here. I know by your history you're a compulsive fucking liar. So why would I believe anything that comes out of your fuck mouth? No, I'm
Yeah.
good. So, no, that shit doesn't bother me. Well, so you can say whatever the fuck you want. And I mean, and just like them two, what was them two dudes walking around in them Klan uniforms
Uh-huh.
in Georgia or whatever, thinking that man, we gonna do to them what we did to their ancestors, and fucked around and found out and had dinner with Jesus. Well, ain't
Well,
nobody playing with you, goofy motherfuckers. Ain't nobody scared of you, motherfuckers, man. Get that off. Like, we can get that out of the way now. Here's the thing. We just want to be left the fuck alone. Let us do our fucking thing, champ. Let us build some shit. And if we don't build it, like I told you before, if God wanted y'all to take over and be at the top of the hierarchy, cool. Then why the fuck are your numbers dwindling so bad?
well, and so
I was just saying, man, please. People only believe that bullshit because y'all keep selling it and keep listening to it. I don't listen to that shit.
so I'm reminded of what's happening in Lincoln Heights, Ohio. It's one of the story. It's like one of the early historically black villages in Ohio. Okay, and the first, and it is a bit of history, is the first self-governed black community north of the Mason-Dixon line. Okay, that's also where those neo-Nazis decided to march. Remember a couple years last year, I think, where the neo-Nazis decided to march in that township in Ohio, and they ended up getting chased out of town, or like chased out of town. You know, their cars got wrecked and stuff like that, and you know, people are like, well, they have their right to express themselves and blah blah blah. No, what they're doing is actually making a threat. Like that's a threat. Their presence, they know that their presence is trying to threaten the community.
No, it's terrorism, is what it is.
And they got met with a force of people that lived in that community said we're not going to put it up. Well, Lincoln Heights is in the news again because now some residents have started. They've organized an armed patrol, and
the cops ain't gonna do it.
And so they walk kids to school. They patrol the neighborhoods to make sure that there's no of those index crimes going on, and they protect it against, you know, again, if they get targeted again, they're protecting it. And so they're letting people know, hey, you're not going to come down here and do whatever. And their narrative, and that's what I'm saying, their narrative of America is the reason why they're able to mobilize so quickly. When somebody said neo-Nazis are in town, we're going to go out and meet them. Because the narrative of that town is the first black established town, self-governed town north of the Mason-Dixon line. That's their historical narrative. And so how many times have they had to face down intruders that meant to do them bad? That's the historical narrative. People don't understand how powerful these things are. And the narrative or framework that these neo-Nazis are working with is probably not as deep or as long lasting as this black town. They're going off of, well, we just have this list of beliefs, and so we're going to go out and show these black people through force that we're not, whatever, we're going to try to intimidate them where they live. And they weren't ready to interact with a narrative of people that they've already experienced this multiple times through their history. This is just the latest iteration of it. We talk about American narratives. One of the American narratives we talked about this a lot. You know, the entire concept of black armed resistance during the Civil War or during the Civil Rights Movement, especially in the theater of Mississippi. But across the Deep South and even just the regular South, there's all kinds of stories of black folks taking up arms, black veterans taking up arms to not only defend their homes, but also defend the marchers for the nonviolent arm of protest.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why that was an entire viable strategy was because when they weren't out marching, they had armed protection. You know, The guy who wrote Negroes with Guns was also one of the ones that was one of the key people that provided protection for Rosa Parks. So there was an entire framework of Black non-resistance that you don't hear about because those stories don't get told as part of the American narrative. There's only one side of that story that gets told, and we can talk about why, but that's a whole nother show.
Right.
About armed Black folks. That's, you mentioned arming Black folks, and instantly somebody's feelers go up. Instantly, their hackles get raised. So we talk about it when we don't understand, when these narratives collide with one another. We see increased fragmentation. We see more punitive politics. We see we do need to talk about the punitive politics because that's what's happening. Grievance-based politics always targets a scapegoat. Look at Somali, the Somalians, what those Somali immigrants are having to deal with in Minnesota from the president of this country.
Oh yeah, they took that. The Somalis, they took that whole thing over.
And they talk, and he's calling them trash and garbage and all this other stuff, and then put the weight of the federal government out to root them out and destabilize their community. That's what we're talking about, punitive politics. Less capacity to take collective action, because I don't think people understand. Collective action requires you giving something of yourself to receive something in exchange. But when you are so at odds with all these other people, there is no room for that. Okay. So societies don't collapse from disagreement. They collapse from when they collapse when those narratives start colliding with one another and people don't understand what's happening.
Okay.
So the rest of this is kind of surface level stuff. What I'm going to say is this, and I just said this, but if you're in a position where you are in what's considered the dominant culture group, somebody who's not from the dominant culture group tells you a narrative, their perspective of this country. We're not saying that becomes your default narrative. We're saying take that in consideration and apply it to yours. And saying my story may be incomplete. My viewpoint of this country may be incomplete. That leaves you the ability to grow. I see so many people that think that when somebody tells a different version of their American experience, they instantly go on the defensive. I got to defend, and I'm going to fight you to the ground on this one. That is a disaster. That's a recipe for failure.
Okay.
So, and read more, guys. Like the beauty of having books and stuff is an ability to go out and read everything that's ever been published, just about, and have access to that at your fingertips. You can inform your world with so many different perspectives. So many different perspectives. I don't think people understand how that works. You can you can take a perspective of somebody that existed decades before you were even born and learn from it.
Or a couple hundred years, man.
Yeah.
A couple hundred years before you were born.
That's a very deep and abiding that gives you a internal understanding of how other people perceive the world and function that you may never get just by talking to people in your local group. So for perspective, if you're looking for somebody to provide you perspective, Fearless's QR code is up on the screen. If you need if you're struggling with something in life and you need an outside perspective, Fearless is the guy to go to.
Hey, I want to ask you a question, man.
What's up?
Because I think that I want people to really understand stuff. What year were you born?
79.
79. Hey, I want you guys to think about it. I was born in 78. Okay. You were born a year after me. Well, when?
September.
Okay. So about a year after me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Martin Luther King died 10 years to me being alive and 11 years for you. So I want you to think about that. 10 years. Dr. Martin Luther King, people can say whatever they want, but that man did a lot for people just in general, right?
Mm-hmm.
Dead within that time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Malcolm, right? Hold on. God damn it. So Malcolm, right? Malcolm died at 65, right? Think about that, 65. So what? So for me, that'd have been what, 13 years?
Mm-hmm.
So 13 years before I was born, he passed. I want you to really think about that, really consider that this civil rights shit is not so far off that we're talking about 200-300 years. You know what I'm saying? We're not talking about that.
My mom was in high school during segregation. Like she
That
graduated
that's
during segregation.
that's what I'm saying. Like this is not that.
Well,
You know? So I really want people to truly understand this, really get this, really really dig deep with this. You know what I'm saying? Because like, dude, we ain't that far off.
well, and shoot, here at this thing, Fearless, we talk about narratives, right? I saw an interview with a brother who was he had worked hand in hand with Dr. King. I forgot what his name was, but it's documented. And he talked about the meeting that Malcolm X and Martin Luther King had. And that he said Dr. King understood that even though the public saw them in different spheres, that they were more aligned than they were different. But Dr. King said we have to maintain our distance. We can talk interpersonally, publicly we have to maintain our distance because your perspective is vital for them to understand, as is mine. And so we have to understand that we have to let them know there's a level of duality in the community, and
that we're all not just one way or the other.
because if we
That
mix
there
our
is, yeah, buddy.
if we mix our messages, then they can ignore both of them.
Yep.
And so they worked collaboratively, but it was more behind the scenes. They weren't opposing ideologies. That's why I wanted to talk about the Black Armed Resistance. Those nonviolent marchers, some of them were really zealots about the non-armed side of things. But I can tell you for a fact, Medgar Evers studied the Mau Mau uprising, and they talked him off of a cliff behind. Like the nonviolent people talked him off of a cliff because he was all about the armed resistance action.
Ahura.
And so
yeah, they was not playing.
But they worked collaboratively.
Yeah, I want y'all to, even if you don't want to really look it up, just look up the Mau Mau and see what they were about.
Yeah.
Because them dudes, I ain't gonna lie to you, the British wiped them the fuck out.
And there was a reason, because they wiped them out.
They
wiped them out with extreme prejudice because they were terrified of them.
Extremely. Like if I'll put it to you like this: if blacks in America had the same exact mindset that the Mau Mau had, there would be all the racist shit you see today. There wouldn't be none of that.
But then also,
it wouldn't be none of that.
Y'all need to understand why so many Nigerians of a certain age felt so vitriolic against Queen Elizabeth, because the stuff that they did to put down that uprising, the stuff they did to put down the uprising was so vicious and so ugly and so violent, that there are Nigerians to this day that are walking around maimed from what the British did to them. And that's why when Queen Elizabeth died, a lot of those colonies, they were thrilled. They were over the moon, because this is all in recent memory for them. That, and who else? The Irish. The Irish did not fuck with Queen Elizabeth and the British monarchy at all.
Really?
But people were so locked into their narrative of what the British monarchy stood for now, that they don't understand that it was really recently in recent history where they were torturing Nigerians to death. And so people don't understand that. And so people were getting all in their feelings. Like, if anybody has an issue, if anybody has an axe to grind with the British Empire, it's going to be Nigerians, because of how poorly what they did to Nigeria as a colony.
Right.
But let's see, Liberty Twitcher. Keep in mind, I was talking about issues back in the 70s. He's still alive. Okay, so okay. All right.
Oh shit.
So I want you, and so I want you to.
Oh shit.
So this entire conversation has been about narratives, right? And so I want you to listen to the narrative that I'm gonna put forward to you. Thomas Sowell hasn't had anything to do with the black community since the 50s. He's not lived in community with black folks. He's not interacted with black folks in any measurable form. So at best, his most recent understanding of being in community with black folks is almost 60 or 70 years old.
And that's all. And Ludi Trisha, thank you for.
We appreciate you.
We appreciate you, but that's literally almost like saying that Clarence Thomas has anything to do with black communities too, because he does not.
He does not
whatsoever.
And I've met Clarence Thomas. Clarence Thomas, he, when you meet him, he's an affable guy. He's a friendly guy. And he does see himself as a mentor to younger black people. He sees himself
as that.
But the language that he utilizes and the way that he interacts with other black folks does not represent that. There's an entire reason why the character Uncle Ruckus on the Boondocks was modeled after Clarence Thomas, and that is that he's modeled after Clarence Thomas, because there's a level of disconnect that he has from the black community, and a lot of it had to do with when he landed on college campuses. He came in as right as integration was starting up. And so there was a group of very qualified black students that had been excluded from, I forgot what Ivy League university he went to, but they qualified, they had passed all the tests. The only reason they weren't allowed in the Ivy League university was segregation. They get in and they're like, okay, we're here. And Clarence Thomas's entire thing, he had a chip on his shoulder because well, people only think I'm here because I'm black. And it's like, no, you're qualified. You have the highest test scores. They excluded you. He had it in his mind that people thought. And so that's been the viewpoint that he's been fighting against his entire life. That's the narrative that he's told himself. And it's informed his entire politics, especially when it comes to black people. So did I say that? That's the question. That's the question. At what point did I say that? I think you missed the point where I think you did miss the early phase where I had some critiques of leftist politics as a result, as it regards to black people, bro. I never said that. I said Thomas Sowell hasn't really been in community with black folks for a long time. And putting him as some kind of expert of black folks or somebody who has internal knowledge of it, understand that his knowledge is 60 or 70 years old. And so if you're asking for somebody who's in the black community, who's in community with other black folks, he wouldn't be the person I would take advice from.
No, not at all. And no, so his question, and I think it's very fair. Yeah. Your question also was, well, so again, you're talking about people, you're asking about people that really don't mess with the black community like that at all. Yeah,
that's what we're saying, bro.
I mean, and that's what we're saying. That would be almost like that would be almost like us asking you, well, does Eminem see any point
depending
on what you're talking about?
Depending on your age.
Right, depending on your age and what you're talking about. Like you talking about Ben Carson, I'm sure you're gonna probably bring up Candace Owens, Larry Elders. We brought up Clarence Thomas, Walter Williams, the economist, or whatever. Herman Cain, and one of my favorite people, though, I will say this, is John McWhorter, and he's a linguist. Mm-hmm. Like I have probably 4 or 5 of his books, and I love him.
So
I love him.
Let me put it.
So for me personally, I don't really mess with a lot of them, but no. I mean, again, it's not a thing about it. For me, it's more a thing not about color, but culture.
So here's what I'm gonna say. What I think what you're applying is you're applying a leftist or right political frame to this, and that's not what the conversation is.
Yeah, no, there's not that. No,
we're talking about black folks that that were to hold on a second, because there's one specific I'm trying to pull up, one specific black conservative that I'm going to pull up. But what I'm telling you is we're looking at it from a frame of left and right politic, and that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about
No.
black folks that are in community with black folks consistently. Because here's the thing, I've got black conservatives in my family, but they're also in ongoing community with other black folks, so they would have a better perspective on how black folks interact with one another than
So
somebody
do
who's been
I.
removed from who's been removed from it. But the idea that liberal, left, right, and all that other stuff matters in the framework of what we're talking about. So, okay, one of the things is when I was growing up, Gifted Hands was required reading. Ben Carson's book was required reading for black kids, and we read it because the generation that I came up in was obsessed with this idea. Well, not obsessed with it, but the concept of this black excellence, where you had to go out and actually overachieve to get half of what your white counterparts had. I was raised under that. And so by the time I was 36 years old, I had accomplished literally everything that there was to do in my industry, because that's how driven I was. And a lot of black folks that are my age, who are in the profession, who do the professional class and managerial stuff, they have the same story. So for us, Ben Carson's Gifted Hands was required reading. But as my mom got older and realized a lot of Ben Carson's ideas didn't align with her reality of experience as a black woman, she ended up moving away from Ben Carson. She thought Gifted Hands was a great book, but the person that wrote it was not in congruence with what her experience of life was. And so that's what we're talking about when we talk about Thomas Sowell, or we talk about Ben Carson, or we talk about Candace Owens. Candace Owens is one of them folks that she was a liberal commentator until she realized that there was no money over there. Mm-hmm. And then she reinvented herself. But there's a very specific guy that I'm looking up. He was in the theater of Black Armed Resistance in Mississippi. And he was a black conservative, more or less, during the time frame. He was more conservative. And he was death. He was Mr. Death to Socialist. I'll shoot a socialist if they get in my face, kind of that level. Mm-hmm. But he also was in congruence and alignment with the black community. And so you go to his house and it was like a fortress, they said. And he was armed because he was getting threats from the Ku Klux Klan and everything. But he was the one, he actually, so I think he was the one that made sure that Emmett Till's mother could get to and from Mississippi, or to and from the Deep South, safely. He's the one that drove her down there. He escorted her back and forth, but he was also a black conservative. So there's room under the tent, but also the standard that we have, and it's just me and Fearless' standard. But in order for you to be a black conservative, who I put a lot of stock in what you say, and I see your posts and stuff, so I'm gonna get to it in a second. You have to actually have some level of engagement with black community. And what we're telling you is people like Ben Carson, Thomas Sowell. I know you said Candace is nut, but she falls into this. Larry Ellison, is it Ellison? Larry Elders, not Ellison. Yeah, Elders, Ellison is Oracle. Larry Elders. A lot of these people, the role that they serve, and I need you to understand this, they function. Their function is their job, their audience is white people. Thomas Sowell's talking to white people. He's not talking
and in a lot of cases angry
white
people too.
He's not talking to me. He's talking to an audience of white people, telling them about black people and basically telling them how they believe black people think, talk, and act from his perspective, and what we should be doing.
You talking about Thomas Sowell?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and then not only that though, but he also leaves out a bunch of information as well. So he'll basically kind of cherry pick some of his conversation to basically alleviate any accountability or any guilt or any bullshit that goes along with why we are where we are. He'll just try to make it seem like it's just Oh, well, this is all on you. Like, none of this other stuff has anything to do with anything. So the question that you are asking is which black conservative ideas are good ideas?
What's a
Here,
conservative idea?
well, what's a conservative idea? Like, we have to first, because here's the thing, everything that certain that some of these people, um, Clarence Thomas said, some of it I agree with. Some of the things that Thomas Sowell has said, I've agreed with. Some of the things that Larry Elder has said, I agree with. Ben Carson, not really so much because
Yeah.
I don't believe in Jesus. But Alan West, retired Air Force and
Yeah.
conservative political leader, I agree with. There's a lot of stuff that conservatives have said that I agree with.
And so,
I mean, but the problem is that people on the right will actually act like, well, there's nothing that nobody on the left is saying that makes a little bit of sense. We can actually listen to both and say, okay, well, I can understand this over here. This over here, I'm not having a good understanding of. I'd love to maybe talk to this person about this. Not an argument, but a conversation. This over here, I think is way too much sometimes out there, but I can understand where you're coming from or whatever. So how can we take this and this over here and bring it together? But the problem is that when you say, um, um, when you say that that things should be the way they are, first and foremost, let's look at the word conservative. Conservative means what? It means to keep things the way that they
yeah,
are.
it's to maintain. It's a
It's to
movement.
maintain
It's a movement based on maintaining the
the status quo.
right.
The status quo, brother, sister, whatever, fluid gender, whatever. Listen, listen. Black people have not been in control of shit.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, I'm just saying, yeah, our government has fucked us. Not some of us, all of us,
Uh,
from the left and the right. They don't care.
okay, so let me throw a soft
So
three for you.
again, so it's not a thing about it's not a thing about liberal or conservative. It's a thing about right and fucking wrong, bro.
Yeah, well, you're talking about
Period.
okay. So Liberty Twitcher, you're
Like,
getting into
you don't let somebody starve, man. Period.
well, Liberty Twitcher. So you're getting into the idea of neoliberalism, which is basically neoliberalism is both Democrat and Republican or neoliberal experiments, right? So here's what I'm gonna say to this. One, we have to define what a conservative idea is because we keep asking what good conservative ideas, and so I'll break it down to you like this. My mom was not a conservative by any stretch of the imagination, okay? But the thing that I've heard parroted as conservative ideas is hard work, earning your keep, getting up and doing not expecting anything of the world, going out earning every piece, no handouts and everything. My mom drilled that into me when I was young. It wasn't a liberal or conservative idea. It was, she said, Brian, in order to get half as far as your white peers, you're gonna have to work twice as hard. You might as well put that in your brain, and that's got to be your modus operandi moving forward. Because you got to understand, she grew up under segregation. She grew up getting spat on at lunch counters. That's the world she existed in. And so now she's seeing the world transform and seeing her young black son enter this world that isn't too far removed from the time where she's getting spat on bus counters. Remember, like I said, like Fearless said, Martin Luther King died 11 years before I was born. And so the world my mom
11 years.
The world my mom existed in, the world my mom existed in looked radically different than the one I grew up in. And so her experience of the world was, you're not going to get anything from these people. They're not going to hand you anything. Everything you're ever going to get in your life, you're going to have to go out and earn it. You're going to have to earn it the hard way because there's no easy passes. Nobody gives you anything. Expect nothing from this planet. Now, for a lot of people, they will frame that as a conservative idea. For a lot of black folks my age, we just grew up like that. That's not a conservative idea. That's just how we perceive the world. And so when we talk about what's a liberal idea versus a conservative idea, Understand the concept of conservatism, conservative politics is to conserve, is to maintain a status quo, or
That's it.
maintain society as it is, maintain the structures and hierarchies that exist in the society as it exists. Maintaining
Currently,
all the
currently,
institutions, all is maintaining it, or going back to an idealized version of these institutions where they dominated the entire society. That is a conservative idea. What part of that benefits Black people?
so yeah.
What part of a status quo, looking at this country's recent marriage to segregation, de jure segregation, not de facto, de jure segregation, segregation by law,
Mhm.
redlining, all the other things, all the things that were prescribed to keep Black people at the bottom of this imaginary hierarchy that the people at the top decided that,
Imaginary
yeah,
hierarchy.
this imaginary hierarchy that they're enforcing. They're enforcing imaginary hierarchy upon us. Okay. What would a Black person want to conserve about that? That's the question.
Yeah, that's the question.
If we're and this is your answer, because what I'm saying is the reason why I'm reframing the perspective is because you're trying to force this into a political binary. You're trying to force this conversation to exist
to a 0 and 1 type of thing.
Yeah, a zero-sum game. You're trying to reduce this entire conversation of all the stuff that we were talking about American narratives. Like, we're almost 3 hours into this, and we've talked a lot about a lot of other things, and none of it had anything to do with Democrat, Republican, left, right. And the only thing I mentioned about the left was my critique of the left's view of racial politics, because it all revolves around class solidarity, and the people that were on the front lines of enforcing segregation typically were, a lot of them were poor white people that were actually hierarchy, they were closer to Black people than they were to rich white people. But that's the only thing. It was my entire critique of leftist politics for Black folks. No, it's okay, bro.
No, you
don't have to apologize. What I'm saying is,
no, please don't.
What I'm saying is, you got to understand that we weren't talking in the political frame, and so a lot of our stuff is kind of, it's agnostic to a political party. It's agnostic to a political movement, and so for us to talk about this stuff, it doesn't exist within the binary of Democrat, Republican. Like, if I'm talking Democrat, Republican, I'm going to tell you Democrat, Republican, left, right, all these other things that are along this political thing. But what we're talking about is, it really wasn't based on that. And so if we're trying to force it through that framework, then that's the answer. Yeah, like when we talk about a conservative movement, if conservatism is built on protecting a certain way of society set up, protecting the hierarchies and institutions of a society, not removing them. We're not destroying them. We're not removing them. We're trying to preserve them. Then for a Black person, you got to ask yourself, what would a Black person want to preserve in this hierarchy, in this system? What would they want to conserve in the system? And so there's kind of your answer why a lot of Black people don't check the box of a social conservative, even though we may have ideas that conservatives have trademarked or stamped for themselves. Those are just things that we grew up with. Those are ideologies and frameworks that we grew up with. They weren't earmarked as conservative for us when we grew up. They're just things that we were taught. And so the branding side of it is a relatively new phenomenon, is what I'm saying. Where the political ideology of a conservative is hard work and all this other stuff. I grew up under hard work. That wasn't ideologically, that wasn't conservative. That was just what I grew up under.
Right. So I mean, and then not only that though, again, like you mentioned, Thomas Sowell, again, I mean, like, so some of the stuff that he does talk about is culture, habits, incentives, the norms for what matters enormously, right? Family structure, education, stuff like that. But what he misses, the part that he doesn't get, is that he never talks about the power asymmetry, right? Mm-hmm. So who sets the rules for some of these things that happen, for culture, for habits, for education, for family structure, and all this stuff? He never talks about who actually set the rules. How did the rules get even? Why are we doing this in general, period, across the board? So he doesn't go and talk about that. He doesn't talk about of controlling capitalism. Who controls capitalism? He doesn't talk about zoning. He doesn't talk about labor markets. He doesn't talk about lending, and he doesn't talk about like culture where like culture doesn't arise in just a vacuum. It's shaped by policy, exclusion, when you're excluding people from stuff, and coercion over time or whatever. So again, he doesn't talk about some of these things. Uh, One more thing, he also now what he does get right. He talks about slavery, Jim Crow, stuff like that. But how it doesn't it doesn't explain everything today. So many groups rose despite discrimination. Right now, what's missing? Again, he doesn't talk about the redlining. He doesn't talk about the asset gaps, school funding, how neighborhoods are affected by policy and credit access. So he talks about things not necessarily from a standpoint of what happened to create these problems. He talks about from the standpoint of this is the results of what we have. But that's almost like critical race theory. It's like, how can we talk about this over here if we don't talk about this over there?
Well,
you see what I'm saying? And that's some of the problem that we're having in general. And when other groups will talk about, well, why don't Black people build themselves up, pull themselves up by the bootstraps, the same way that the Jews and the Italians and the Irish and the Chinese did? And you're comparing our shit to somebody else's stuff, but then forgetting that we are involuntarily here.
Well, and there was an involuntary. We were kind of forced to the bottom of the hierarchy. Regardless of who came in, it was always
correct.
Always the racial.
And we're the only group that you cannot kick out of this country.
Well, okay, so let's look at it like this, because that's not the point I wanted to get to. I want to address this on the screen.
I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, that's fine. What I'm talking about for me. So one of the things you got to understand. So when we talk about immigration, right? Immigration patterns. So Black people have always been forced to the bottom of the caste system in this country. Always been forced to the bottom of the imaginary hierarchy we live under. And so typically what happens is whenever a new migrant group came in, the community that they were forced to live alongside was Black folks. So the reason why a lot of Black cookbooks from deep South, down South, around slavery, post-Reconstruction era, Jim Crow era, you can go back as far as you want to. A lot of those cookbooks had spaghetti recipes in them. The Black soul food cookbooks had spaghetti recipes in them because Black people and Italians were forced to live in community with one another, because Italians, when they first came in, they were the lowest on the chain from an immigrant group, but the lowest on the chain in community in the American society were Black folks. And so first it was Irish people, and then it was Italians. And so they were forced to live in community with us until they were promoted, more or less, to not being on that caste system. They were promoted to being white. That's what I'm saying. But all right, so let me jump back, because there's a couple of different things I need to hit. Okay.
So while you're doing that, so no, what I was saying was that the thing about Thomas Sowell and the education, I'm saying that's what he said. I'm not stating that. What he said was, and no, I don't think that we should lower the standards by any means of the imagination. You came in, Liberty Twitcher, when we had already discussed
all of that,
all of this stuff or whatever. So if you want to go back and rewatch it, you're more than welcome. But some of the stuff that we had talked about was it wasn't to lower any standards at all. If anything, our thing is the way that we're teaching certain things in general doesn't answer the question to our kids, which is, why in fact do I need to know this? So I think that if you can explain things for their world, for their stuff, and in such a way that works for them, they will remember it.
Well, then let me throw this in
like off top.
So one of the things is, the reason why I was saying is, we're not saying there are no good Black conservatives are bad. I'm not qualifying it as good and bad. What I'm saying is the reason why you don't see many Black conservatives is the reason I gave you. The reason why it's kind of considered a fringe political ideology at this point in time, just based on numbers and who identifies as a conservative in the Black community and stuff. It's a very small, contained group of people, and a lot of times Black conservatives are in community with one another. And so, matter of fact, there's a Key and Peele sketch that I hate to make it seem like it's a joke, but there's a Key and Peele sketch that literally explains this phenomenon, how Black conservatives interact with one another. A lot of times when they come out and interact with the rest of us, we'll argue with them, we'll play around with them, we'll joke with them, we will debate with them, but they know that they don't represent the mainstream of Black political thought.
Yeah, no, not at all.
And
no,
we know that they don't represent the mainstream of Black political thought. And so it's not good or bad. It's saying there is functionally less Black conservatives, and these are the specific reasons why. Now, education wise, and let's talk about the shining example of the airplane pilot, the Black airplane pilot, right? So when I was 14 years old, by the time I was 14, I had been in an aeronautics program for an entire year at my junior high. I had gone to space camp. I was a mission commander. I was in charge of a lot of the logistics and planning and all the other stuff. And one of the culminations of it was I took a short class that basically taught me the ins and outs of flying a small single prop Cessna plane. And so the mission was I had to take the plane off, control it in the air, and then go through the beginning of the landing procedure. And so I did all that. My trajectory before this would have been a pilot. It would have been like, there's a couple of different career paths. One, when I graduated high school, would have been an engineer. Before I graduated high school, was in aeronautics. And then I also had 4 years of AutoCAD, so I can render an entire building in 3D. So I had a lot in my bag. The reason why I didn't pursue the pilot thing wasn't because of qualifications. I had already had all the pre-qualifications for a lot of people that had never gone through the level of aeronautics education I had gone through. The reason why is, in order to become a commercial pilot in this country, it's about $100,000 investment, and that's before you even get to before you even get hired. I didn't have $100,000 investment laying around. I didn't have $100,000 to invest in all the stuff and all the certifications and all the stuff you have to do to work up to be a commercial pilot. When they're talking about lowering the threshold to get into the seat of being a professional pilot, what they're talking about is removing the financial barriers. Because if you believe financial barriers are a requirement, then you're saying only rich people can be pilots, or have the capacity or mental capacity to be pilots. Even if a poor person manages to pass all the tests and everything, if they can't afford to even take some of these required things, but they could pass it, does that mean they were unqualified, or does that mean they didn't have the money to do it? That's what we're talking about. And so when we're talking about lowering test scores and things along those lines, what are the test scores testing? Right? Fearless and I have had this conversation about this. On paper, we talked about the entire IQ thing. On paper, I took the IQ test. When you're a gifted kid, you end up in the IQ test shit. Anywhere, depending on what cognitive thing, I'm like 140, 145 to 150. That don't mean shit.
I'm 115.
Yeah. That don't mean shit in terms of accomplishments. What that means is cognitively, I can think quickly, and there's certain cognitive tasks that I'm really excel at. And there's other things that I absolutely tank on. That standardized test doesn't mean anything in real life. It's just a score on a piece of paper. I've met people that barely got into college with their test scores and absolutely killed it once they got into school. The test scores didn't mean shit. And so if we're saying that the test scores are the determining factor, at some point, as society evolves past the point of saying this test score doesn't necessarily predict an outcome. So why are we still relying on this test score? So
the test scores are going down because of liberal ideas. So you support lowered standards? No. Dude, why do you keep saying that? No,
that's not what we're saying.
No, not at all.
We're saying give people equal access to prove themselves within the standard that's not based on a standardized test. If you throw out the standardized test and give somebody a college entrance exam and they ace it, does it really matter what the ACT or SAT said? If you had a test that was specifically for the field of study they were going into?
You know what? Actually, Liberty Switcher, you know what that does. I agree with you there. I first and foremost, here when you said this, not representing the mainstream doesn't invalidate their ideas. I 100% agree with you.
We agree with you.
I agree. So I also want to agree with you here too. So clearly, you support lower standards, which actually we don't whatsoever.
We never said that.
We not at all. And then you wonder why people don't have the merit needed for the best jobs. The problem is that if you look at the American government at this present moment of time, you like words, right? There's a certain word called kakistocracy. Mm-hmm. And that is what you guys have done. You have voted for the most worthless individuals to destroy this country, and that's exactly what they're doing.
It's ruled by thieves.
So you're getting exactly what you're talking about right here, and you guys are like, well, you liberals are doing it. I'm not a liberal by no means.
No,
I understand where both people are coming from. I just think that if I were running shit, I would do it differently.
Right.
Just like if you were running things, you probably wouldn't keep things the same way. So, how about this? Let me ask you one question. Would you keep things the same if you were running things? Just yes or no. So, would you keep things the same way? Would you keep things exactly as they are right now if you're running things?
So let me ask you a question.
And that's all I'm asking.
And I'll throw this in here. I'm an employer too, bro. I'm gonna get to you. You support the idea. Okay, so here's the thing. So let's not say, okay, so math scores, right? So again, I already told you the IQ right now. One of the things I do is I have ADHD, and possibly autistic. I haven't got screened for that, but everything's telling me I need to go get screened for it. But anyway, one of the things that comes along with ADHD is I have a dyslexia when it comes to numbers. I'm good at math. I can solve a lot of algebra problems in my head, but if I'm asked to write this stuff out, that's where I start making mistakes, where I have to show my work. That's always been my biggest problem.
So, Switcher, yes or no? Would you change things if you ran stuff? That's all I'm asking. So, yes or no? Go ahead.
So what I'm saying is, do you support the ideas a person's background should be taken into account on their math answers and what school? But so if you know that I score high in these high percentiles and all these other areas, and that math I struggle, not because I don't have the competence to do the math, it's because the numbers visually get flipped around and inverted in my brain. Do we not account for that when we're looking at my math score? I can do all the other things. It's this one thing, and it's a very specific context where it's written stuff on a piece of paper when it comes to math. Mm-hmm. Does that mean you should not look at what my background is? You shouldn't consider that? Or should you say, well, he's bad at math, so he's not qualified for anything? That's what I'm asking you. Because a lot of times you need to understand that when people come, like people don't always come from the same, they don't always come from the same basis economically or educationally. Like I was reading early when I was a kid. That's because my mom taught me how to read herself. Okay. A lot of my classmates didn't read until they got to school. Nobody taught them how to read until they got to school. So if you put us on a verbal acuity, some kind of verbal acuity or reading comprehension test, I'm gonna blow them out the water. Does that mean I was smarter than them? Or does that mean I just got something at the home that they didn't quite get?
Right.
And should that not be taken into account when we're determining things? So that's what we're saying. Nobody's saying lower the test scores. We're saying add some nuance and context to the way that we evaluate raw data. That's what we need to understand. You say numbers don't lie. Numbers absolutely do lie. If you meet a statistician, they will tell you that numbers can be made to say anything. It's about context. It's about syntax. It's about all kinds of other things to evaluate what these numbers are actually saying. And there's level of nuance. There's specific narratives that you're carrying in that allow you to evaluate these numbers a certain way. And so when we use standardized testing as the only metric for performance as opposed to outcomes, That's where we're falling down a slippery slope. Because somebody could bomb a test but provide you great outcomes. I've had staff where if you tested them on specific things, they would suck at it. But when they applied it at their job, the outcomes were amazing because they knew it
Yeah.
intuitively. They just couldn't demonstrate it on a piece of paper. So I
And
wouldn't ask them to train. I never
yeah,
asked them to train.
right. I mean, and not only that though, but Liberty Twitch, it almost seems like what you do has a lot to do with math and numbers and accounting and stuff like that or whatever. And again, though, I think that there's certain people that are going to be great at that without a degree. I know people. Well, I know a lady right now who has no degree at all. She's just a savant when it comes to math.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever question you're asking, whatever problem you give her, she'll be able to handle it right then and there. No training, no nothing. She just understands it. Me, I hate math. I'm not good at math at all. But if you ask me some philosophical questions or this, that, and the other, I will destroy a person when it comes to that because that's where my focus is. So again, your thing is simple math, and that's great for me. I suck at math. I would cheat every chance I get because it doesn't work for me. Now, obviously, it does work for you, and that's amazing, champ. But I mean, we can't necessarily keep thinking that works for one person too, or what one person needs or wants is what you're going to be needing.
That's standardized.
I would never even apply for whatever you do. I wouldn't apply for it. But again, though, what's basic to one may not be basic to another. That's just like common sense for one person isn't always common sense for somebody else.
Right.
So for me, that's how I that's how I look at stuff or whatever. If you're talking about 2 plus 2 or what's this divided by that, I could tell you all day.
And the outcome.
As soon as we get into percent, now here's the thing. I will say this: if I'm studying for it, I'm gonna ace the shit out of it.
Uh-huh.
If I'm studying for it, but I also like to read. I also like to learn in general. So if you're giving it to me for a reason, I'll learn it. But if you're just giving it to me to give it, I'll learn it if and when I need it. But if I don't need it, I'm cool.
A couple of things
That's
before
just me though, bro.
a couple of things before we wrap up here, guys. So a couple of things. So we're talking about math candidates or whatnot. What if we just focused on just like general outcomes and not looking at how they got to it, but we just focus on the outcomes? That's all right. No, don't stick around for a second. Because we're talking about, the concept of these standardized tests and everything. And I know you said we're not talking about it, but when you're looking at test scores, like that's just raw data, right? The concept that we're lowering expectations and stuff, and that's why society is collapsing and things aren't turning out the right way. It's not the lowered expectations. It's the fact. It's the fact.
No.
Like if we look at it like this, let's look at when what are the two? I think it's Boeing and Douglas. I'm looking at the merger. There's a specific airline merger that marked the downward trend of how planes are put together and why they're falling apart midair. And I think it might have been Boeing and McDonnell Douglas. But I think it is McDonnell Douglas and Boeing. Yeah, when they merged together. Boeing was known for when they were putting together planes, they were known for the level of precision, and they would check it 4 and 5 times. They were really, really slow on those production lines, but they made sure that fucking plane was put together. It was built to last. McDonnell Douglas was known for playing fast and loose, and we're going to get this thing out as fast. We're going to get this prototype airline out as fast as possible.
Oh,
and they lost so much money on prototypes because they were just flying through it. So when Boeing got acquired and those two merged, what do you think took over? They forced all the engineers out that were used to the meticulous way that Boeing put together their planes. Forced all of them out. And they brought in all the fast and loose players and put them in positions of power. And that's why we have planes that are falling apart. Does that mean that we have lesser quality engineers? No. It's a failure of leadership. I worked at Boys Town. I worked at Boys Town for decades, right? And we used to say, if you went to Boys Town, if you got an A in a class, you earned it. If you got a B in a class, you earned it. If you got a C in a class, you may earned it. But you also may have just gotten boosted up because Boys Town was an outcomes-driven high school when I was there. I don't know if it was a recent thing. They're outcomes-driven. You could not fail a class unless they wanted to send a message to a kid. They would let you retest and retest and retest and retest and retest until you passed. Super conservative organization. They were doing this shit in the early 2000s, bro. Like, they would not let a kid fail a class.
I know, I was there.
It was a super conservative organization.
I was there. I was in Boys Town. I wasn't a staff. I was a child in Boys Town, and they do not let you fail.
The organization is led by hard line conservatives, really conservative people. They're an outcomes-driven school, and they would not let kids fail classes. The reason why is because they were more worried about the repetitions of this kid getting into school and being able to survive in a classroom setting and learning the skills of surviving in classroom setting, because that translated almost 1-for-1 of whether a kid was able to hold down a job or not. And so they focused on, I don't care if this kid passes this class, we're going to let them test it until they pass it. But if a kid earns an A, if he's an A student at Boys Town, he or she has absolutely earned those A's. But once you start going down the ladder, it's like, all right, well, if you're a C average student in Boys Town, that means that it wasn't a whole lot of trying and stuff. And so that would be how they kind of career track you. Super conservative organization.
Very.
But if we're ascribing specific ideas and frameworks and models of living to liberal or conservative, it doesn't align with the conservative ideology, right? Because that flies in the face of the way I was raised, which was you earn every grade that you get. You deserve everything that you ever get. So, like I said, well, but then again, okay, I'm going to throw this in here. Harvard MBAs, McKinsey consultants. Most people go to Harvard. A lot of these kids are legacy kids. They didn't earn their spot. And that hasn't been the case for over 100 years. But also a lot of them are conservatives. Like a lot of these people that come out of these high level spaces like Yale and stuff, they're some of the biggest political thinkers in this country come from these Ivy League schools, and they're on the conservative end of the spectrum.
Conservative as fuck.
But they didn't earn
I got a couple buddies that graduated from Harvard. Sure. I'm telling you, they ain't nothing. The only thing that's left on these motherfuckers are their hands and feet.
But Yale is very. But that doesn't mean Yale is left. But that doesn't mean that doesn't mean that they're going to turn out left thinking. Is what I'm saying. And so when we look at some of the highest rated schools in the country, there's a lot of legacy admissions. Kids will be dumber than posts. They never have to apply themselves. You can't get an F at Harvard because you paid for it if you're one of those legacy kids. Now, if you're a kid who had to fight and barely got in, and you got to maintain your grade point average every single semester, otherwise you're out, you absolutely better believe that they earned every grade that they got. But if your parents' name is on a building, you ain't getting kicked out that school.
Boy, you ain't getting kicked out of that shit.
You can fail every class, you're never getting kicked out.
And ain't nobody left over in that motherfucker. Who is you talking
about?
But
okay, so who's a Yale grad? Who's a Yale grad that was the president of the United States? I know you know the answer. I mean, there was one that was
how many.
There was one that was recently president of the United States, and he was part of the neocon movement, if I'm not mistaken. So, I think if I'm not mistaken, he's a Yale graduate. Am I lying?
Oh.
George W. Entered the business school. This is George. This is the older one.
Yeah. Both Bush.
Yeah.
Graduated. Yeah. They both went to Yale.
And so, what we're saying is, it's not a level of the institution, guy. What we're saying is, this concept that these scores and these grades qualify people for stuff. To me, is I'm looking at when I'm hiring a staff. When I'm hiring somebody, are you able to do what I hired you to do?
That's it.
And if you
don't, if you're not, I don't hire you.
Right. I don't care about what you scored on this math test back in the days. I don't care about what you got on this standardized test. I don't care about what your reading scores are. I don't care about any of that stuff. Can you do the thing I asked you to do? And if you can't, is it something that you can't do or won't do?
And that's it.
So, but it's not necessarily way off topic. It kind of fits into, we talked about it. And so we're going to wrap up here. It fits into the concept of when narratives collide. When we have a vision of what we believe this country to be, and you interact with somebody who has a different narrative of what they believe the country is. So yeah, what happens when the American narrative gets remixed? You're experiencing it right now because our experiences are different than yours, and we're colliding on some topics, and that's okay. But we appreciate you tuning in. We're almost at 3 hours, guys. We appreciate you tuning in. We're about to get out of here. We'll catch you guys. Is it next week? Maybe.
Yeah, next week.
Talk to y'all later. Peace.